6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All yours.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to 2024 election night coverage in Roane County, West Virginia. Very happy that you all have joined us, not only on our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok accounts, but those of you who are listening out in our listening area on 104.7 FM WVRC. If you happen to be listening on our streaming audio on our website at WVRCFM.com, we do appreciate everyone for joining us here for continuing election night coverage of the 2024 general election. We've already done this once earlier this year, Joseph and myself, and we're very happy to be joined this time by our very own Steve Kornacki. We call him Mr. Josh Downey, Joe McDonald, and I am Andrew Miller. We're going to be here throughout the evening. We're going to get election night results for local elections. There's a few things on the docket for the local election, not a lot of races themselves, but there are some very important levies that are on the ballot for this year in this general election. A lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about are those levies. We will highlight some of the races that are taking place both locally and statewide. There are some very interesting races as well. And then you go to, of course, the national races. A lot of people tonight are going to be solely focused on the big one at the top. We know that that is a huge race for everybody in America. But we're just going to be here trying to get you guys the results and the information that you need as quickly as possible. We want to be the first to get this information out to you. Now, these two were cracking up before we started. Those of you who said no sound, don't worry. We understood that we were not on the air just yet. We were just waiting for some of you to tune in, and we were very excited for that. And it's always funny for me to see the first person that says, can't hear you or no sound, so you unofficially win a prize for that. But, guys, we are here tonight for the next couple of hours, probably maybe 9:30, and that's one of those wonderful things, guys, because I remember years ago when WVRC would come down here to the courthouse and they would cover election night. It would be 11:30, 12 o'clock, 1 in the morning as they were counting those paper ballots back in the day. Now, with everything streamlined here in Roane County, we get results very, very quickly. I do want to thank, obviously, Sienna McDonald, our county clerk, and her staff. They get the election results to us absolutely as fast as they come off of the copier. So we're getting the information to you guys in real time. It's going to be a good night here tonight. We're very interested in how things are going to go, fellas.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild night. I was talking to Cena earlier and got some numbers to throw out. This has been the largest voter turnout, and I'm just basing these numbers off the early voting. This has been the biggest early voting turnout in 20 years. Because I have numbers all the way back to the general of 2004, and the numbers are phenomenal. So far, as of yesterday, just early voting alone was 27% of the county's voter turnout came out for early voting.
That's right. And obviously, Joe, it's probably being driven by the presidential election a little bit this year. There's big turnout.
Absolutely.
But we do, as Andrew said, we have a couple contested races here. One contested race for the House of Delegates locally that we'll be looking at. And then we have those 4 different levies that we've talked a lot about. Yeah. And it's probably been the biggest news when it comes to election here locally. But, yeah, I work here in the courthouse, obviously, and for the past week and a half, every day when you come downstairs into the kind of the main area, the foyer of the courthouse, it's been a line almost back to the sheriff's office. And, day 1, you thought, okay, people were excited, but day 2, day 3, day 4. So, yeah, really good turnout, record-breaking, and, people drive by and you hear some things from the different polling places. And my understanding is it's been a pretty steady flow at the polling places here in Roane County today. So we'll see what that final turnout number is, but I think it's going to be pretty high.
Yeah, I talked to Cena earlier, and she's been on the road all day long, precinct hopping, checking out things, and she said it everywhere she's stopped that the places have been hopping and there's been people voting. So it's wonderful to see that people are taking this seriously and getting out to vote, regardless of which side. We're not going to get into that discussion on which side you're voting. We're just happy that people are taking this seriously and getting out and making their voice heard.
Yeah, I've always said that. Good point. It doesn't matter which way you vote, and I always like to laugh and tell people, well, you got to go vote, because if you don't vote, you don't have a right to complain.
Exactly.
And we all like to complain.
Yes.
Right? So
it's none more than this year, probably.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure one way or the other there'll be some people complain. Maybe not here locally, but there's going to be some complaining, I'm sure, before the night's out, or the morning or week, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is a source of contention for a lot of people is, with the national election driving such high vote totals this year. And, of course, you spoke of that a couple of years ago, Josh, when we didn't have a presidential election. But you're like, hey, on off years, it will be down a little bit. On years that there is a top-of-the-ticket item, and, of course, this one is one of the bigger that we have seen, it's going to drive a lot of people to the polls. And we've seen that in early voting totals, not only in Roane County, but across the state and across the nation. It's going to be very interesting to see how everything plays out. Again, if you're a betting person, you've been looking at the odds back and forth. People who have been following are like, well, was it Republicans or Democrats who were voting early? And none of that matters because you can't actually see what their vote was. So we're just kind of excited about what tonight is going to see.
That's exactly right. And you said, I read an article today. Before we woke up this morning and voting started across this country, 80 million people have already early voted across this country. There have been billions spent on this. I saw a figure in Pennsylvania alone. There's been up to $1 billion spent, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit. And really, when it all comes, we're talking about the presidential election a little bit, it's going to come down to 7 states
Yes.
out of all of this, and could be determined, the presidential election could be determined out of a couple thousand votes. So it'll be interesting to see tonight.
Yeah, we've been working on some graphics for this. Joe's been working hard on graphics. We've got all of our laptops here. We've got, of course, the local races we will get the actual numbers for, which is very nice. And, again, thanks to the county clerk's office, and they're so good at getting that to us. But I've got Metro News pulled up. Josh, you also have Metro News pulled up in the instance that I can't read things, which is very likely. But you've got one of the national media sources out there that's really good for updating those swing state election races.
That's right, and I know everybody's got their favorite news source, and I do too. But so I'm not, advocating for one over the other. But if you're really into this and wanting to see, one of the websites that I follow along with Metro News is NBC News' website because not for commentary, but they have the maps broken down.
Yeah. And
you can pull up these maps, especially if you're really in this presidential election, and go to individual counties in these 7 important states. And as our polls are going to close at 7:30 this evening, and we should start getting some results shortly after that. But Georgia is going to close at 7, so we're about 11 minutes away from the first swing state closing. And then by 7:30, 8 o'clock, we're going to start seeing North Carolina close, and then Pennsylvania close. And then later on, as we go across the country, obviously, we're going to be looking at Michigan, Wisconsin, and we probably won't be on the air, but then Arizona and Nevada. So
didn't somebody say Arizona's going to be a week or two?
They have some different rules. So,
I think they're still getting provisionals from the last one.
It's quite possible. Somebody should have told Toby Ford, yes, today was Election Day, Toby. I hope that you voted early if you've missed that. So, we're very excited to be here. Let's talk really quickly when it comes to the local stuff that we have. Obviously, there are 4 main levies that are on the docket here, Josh. One that we've talked about significantly is the excess levy for the school system. That is on the ballot here this year, and that's a very important one for the school system. Of course, if you guys have watched any of our lives throughout the last few weeks, we've had a chance to discuss that one a lot.
That's right. And one thing about these, we'll talk about the school first. There's different rules with different levies. The school levy, the excess levy, only has to have 50% to pass, 50 plus 1. So those are the numbers we'll be looking at. Historically in this county, Roane County does not pass school excess levies.
Yeah.
We have passed a couple different school bond levies in the past. Years ago, that's what helped build County Stadium, and then a few years ago, we passed a bond levy here in the county that did some maintenance type work, roofing on one of our schools. So history is against the excess levy passing, but you've started this time seeing some signs around town. There's been a little bit of a swell of support for it. So we will see what comes, and that'll probably be one of the more interesting things we'll look at here locally. But then we have the 3 other levies.
Yeah.
And these are all levies that have passed in the past. We have our senior nutrition. We have a levy for patch, and then we have our emergency services, which is also in the library, is tied into that. Now, those levies, though, have to have 60% to pass. So it'll be, you remember when we're looking if numbers are coming in and, you could get 57, 58%. And in today's world, that's a great number. Well, that doesn't pass those levies. So we'll keep an eye on those numbers. And, if you're really into politics, does the other 3 levies being on the ballot help the school levy get passed, or vice versa? As we look at numbers, does that school levy that historically doesn't do well, is it going to affect the other 3? So those are the type numbers that we're going to have to look at tonight.
You wonder when people go into the voting booth, if they look at the levies and like, yes, for the first one, so why not? I'm supporting all of the levies in this community. Or they may be like, man, how many more are you going to tax me on? So that is very interesting to see. Those are the big things that are on the docket for us here locally. There is a local race, obviously, for House of Delegates for Roane and Wirt counties, and that is the Republican side is Erica Moore, who is I guess you call her the incumbent in this situation, and then Juliana Penfold on the Democratic side. So those two are squaring off here in the general.
That's correct. And regardless of what happens in that race, that is going to be a historic race here in Roane County, because Erica Moore is the incumbent, but she was actually appointed to finish a term of Riley Keaton.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be tonight, for the first time in history, Roane County will elect a female to represent them in the House of Delegates here in the state legislature.
So no matter what, history will be made on that situation as well. We do have some statewide races, obviously, that we're looking at. Before we get to those, Joe, I wanted you to go ahead and pull up the automatic
tabulators.
We can't officially call it because, of course, everything has to be done by the book, canvassing and all that stuff. But there are many races here unopposed that we needed to talk about, people who are headed to wins here.
Well, now we don't want to talk about unopposed, but if you are a gambler, these are the races you want to gamble on tonight. I guarantee it. These are Joe's picks of the night. So we'll pick them up here. So here's our automatic unofficial winners, because these candidates had nobody running against them. So for state treasurers, congratulations to Larry Pack. Can we go ahead and congratulate him since they've already won unopposed? Or
I suppose we could.
I think it's pretty safe.
Yeah. Larry Pack is going to be the state treasurer. Glenn Jeffries is going to be the state senator for the 8th district. Caleb Greathouse is going to be Roane County's newest county commissioner. Daniel Minardi is going to be the new Roane County prosecuting attorney. Philip Deaver is being back in for Roane County Sheriff for another term, and Emily Westfall is back again for another term as our local Roane County assessor.
And Joe, when we look at that, the one thing you'll notice, and this will come up as we talk about some of the other state elections, you'll see those are all Republicans that are running unopposed. And, that's a shift that we have seen in West Virginia now over the past 25 years. 40, 50 years ago, you'd have seen those same results, but it would have been for the Democrat Party, who had a vast majority in the state of West Virginia. That has obviously switched. These are the unopposed races, but when you start looking at some of the statewide races for governor and U.S. Senator and all those things, you're probably going to see a lot of similar trends, because at this point in time, the Republican Party has just built it's a mega majority here in the state of West Virginia, and a lot of that's probably attributed to some national politics in a way.
And that's where it gets interesting is, okay, so let's narrow it down to here locally. The contest between Erica Moore and Juliana Penfold. Okay, is she going to pull that Republican shift, or is she not? And now that this is a multi-county thing, most of the candidates' votes are going to come out of Roane County, but if it's a close race, Wirt County could possibly be the deciding factor in that race.
Yeah, that's always the case, and that goes back to years past. Our delegates have always had a couple other precincts in other counties. It used to be Jackson County, and then with redistricting a couple years ago, it moved up to Wirt County. So, there's some votes up there. So, we'll see what those numbers do. It's a Juliana Penfold running as the Democrat. That's some big numbers to beat. But we'll have to see what those numbers look like coming in.
Yeah, because I actually have the breakdown of the numbers here on the registered voters in Roane County. The numbers are phenomenal. Registered Democrats in Roane County is 2,103, which is actually in third place when you look at the top 3 options. The no party, no affiliation candidate or voters is 2,396. The Republican registered voters in Roane County is 4,124.
Yeah, and those are interesting numbers, and especially when you look at what a lot of times we refer to as the independent voter.
Yeah.
But you can actually register as an independent.
Right.
But it's the non-registered voter that is growing in this county. That's growing statewide, and it wouldn't surprise me unless there's a major change in politics nationally in the state. Someday in the future, you could be looking at that non-registered voters being the largest group.
Well, there's one in Roane County that had I known about, I would be a member of the party of the Jedi.
Yeah, we have one Jedi party.
We have one Jedi party here as well. Folks, we're going to take it away from the radio side of things. Again, polls are open here in Roane County until 7:30 p.m., although there are some other states and things that are going to be starting to get going at 7 o'clock. So it's going to get a lot of fun here. It's going to get very busy for us probably around the 8 o'clock hour. We're going to get real busy when it comes to the local election stuff for you. But stick around, folks. Again, if you're listening in on WVRC, we do appreciate it. If you want to, feed over to our live remote. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch. There's nowhere you can't find us, folks, here for continuing election night coverage here on WVRC. It is Roane County, West Virginia, and the national elections here on WVRC. I think I did it good for George. I gave George just like 1 minute before he has to go to the top of the hour. So, guys, it is going to be a lot of fun here tonight. And, again, we've got different things pulled up here. One thing to talk about, and, again, as you mentioned, that major shift in West Virginia for this big Republican outpouring or wave
surge,
or whatever you call it, this surge, this has ramifications immediately, by the way, for the national politics when we talk about Congress. We talk about the Senate of the United States and that slim majority back and forth, side to side. Of course, all the pundits nationally are talking about, well, obviously, they say West Virginia is going to give one of those seats back to Republicans because with Joe Manchin retiring and, of course, the popularity of Jim Justice, a lot of people are saying that is a seat that's going to be flipped. Now, again, it's up in the air, but just the way the trends have gone, Josh.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, Joe Manchin, long time in politics here in West Virginia, recently switched to an independent or a non-registered, although he still caucused with the Democrat Party in the Senate, so it didn't affect the control. If you look at all the polls across the board, there's a very strong chance, and I know that they haven't closed yet, but very strong chance that Jim Justice is going to do very well. And, you know, one person in the U.S. Senate is a big deal. And so along with a very tight race in Ohio, a very tight Senate race in Pennsylvania that we'll talk a little bit more when we talk about the presidential election some. And also out in Montana, there's a John Tester. It's been a long time. He is the lone wolf, the Democrat in Montana, a very strong Republican, very conservative state. He is a conservative Democrat. But some polls, I think, are showing that John Tester could get beat tonight. So people are projecting early on, not with polls closing, but with just different polls, that the Republicans will probably take the U.S. Senate. Now, a few years ago, we thought that it was going to be a huge red wave and Republicans were going to run roughshod over everything, and that didn't actually happen.
Yeah, you and I were here discussing that.
Yeah, I had my little red wave and all of this, and it was a red wave in West Virginia that night, but that red wave countrywide really turned into a low tide for the Republican Party in that race.
Well, I wonder when it comes to that, obviously, a lot of people put a lot of faith in polls, and I think that was all blown up in 2016. And you see these national polls now, and you take them a lot more with a grain of salt, whether you should or not. And of course, all of them use their own analytics and their own data points and how they do that, but they're all very close to the vest right now with this national election, and I wonder if they have the ability to be cautious in their polling or cautious in their I don't know how that happens, but there's not a lot of leakage here right now when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's one of those. It's kind of a double-sided coin where both sides are really scared to
be the outlier.
Yeah, to be the outlier or to sway one way or the other because it could blow up in their face, and they really don't want to push the envelope one way or the other. So they're just saying, well, it's close. How close? Oh, it's just close, and that you're not going to get. You'll hear them say, "Oh, it's within a point or two," but you won't get any hard numbers. And I'm sitting here looking at a site we may pull up here after a while, and they're looking at talking about the Senate. They're estimating there's an 86% chance that the Republicans are going to take over the Senate, but the chances of a Republican clean sweep, they're only estimating at about a 38% right now.
Yeah, when it comes to the House, that's a whole different
Yeah, they're looking
battle.
They're estimating 64% chance of the Democrats taking over the House with a 15% chance the Democrats are still on a clean sweep on that. So there's a pretty good chance the Democrats may gain control of the House, but if it being a clean sweep, it looks like it's probably not going to happen.
Josh, how many races open in the House of Representatives? 43, or I think there was a number I heard.
In the U.S. House?
Yeah.
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot more than just 43.
All of them. I mean, it's 2-year races.
Okay.
2-year term. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's.
I don't know. A number I heard was 43
Yeah.
late last night in my head.
But in the Senate race, there's not everybody in the Senate is up. So we'll see that. But these polls, here's the thing I think is scaring the polls too. It's so close, and this could be a 1 or 2 point race. But if it breaks, let's say Donald Trump wins, he could win by 1%. In all these swing states, well, it's going to look like a blowout.
Yeah.
But it's been a very tight race in each one of them, and in the other way too. If Harris would happen to win, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and she wins those by 1 or a half a percentage point, we're going to wake up and say, well, the Electoral College vote, look, she's over 300, and this wasn't even close, but it really was. And I think that's got some of the pollsters spooked too.
Yeah, and I pulled the map up here, and I've been doing my homework on this, and I saw a study there a couple nights ago where they was talking about Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin historically typically vote the same. So going back before the 2016 election, all three of those states were heavy Democrat winners. And then in 2016, Trump squeezed out a win out of all three states just barely. And then in 2020, it was a hard shove back into Democrats. So it's very possible. It's a very slim chance that if either candidate gets one, that they don't get at least the other two. So those three states, those are really hard to watch.
Right. And Drew, it's 435 House seats up for
Okay.
me. So
But at least I was close, right?
I see how you got the 43.
Yeah. Maybe my eyes were really weary, and I missed the 5 at the end of that. Sorry.
But yeah, Joe, you're right. There's going to be millions and millions. Like I said, we mentioned earlier, 80 million people have already voted, and this, if it's as close as all the polls are saying, this could come down to 100,000 votes broken up over 7 counties.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're looking at vote differences of, 10, 12,000. There's 7 million voters in Pennsylvania, and it could come down to 10 or 15,000 people.
Yeah, and that literally, like you said, it could be down to 1 or 2 counties. One county could flip an entire state, and that's where it gets interesting / scary, depending on which side of the fence you're sitting on where this goes. And with these 6 states, so I mean, me personally, with my homework, I could some of these states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, those could be up in the air. Personally, I think North Carolina may go red.
Right, and it could. Well, here's the thing we're going to have to look at, and we just don't know how it's going to affect it. And you can't ignore it. They had a tragedy in North Carolina there in the western part. You had horrific flooding.
Yes.
And not just, we've had bad flooding here. I mean, there are towns there that are gone.
Yeah.
So what parts, that's some of the more rural parts of North Carolina. So those are traditionally strong Republican, a rural area, at least in presidential races. But also Asheville was hit hard.
Yeah.
Asheville is a college town. Asheville has a more liberal lean to it if you've ever traveled there. It's a great place to visit. But it was also. So what effect do things like that have on this election?
Right. And based on the devastation and the troubles people have been getting help here recently with the flood, does that play a factor in switching a state one way or the other? I mean, that and then the fallout from North Carolina, people from the outside looking in, looking at that, how does that swing?
Yeah, exactly. Those are the unknowns. And then the other thing you look at, especially when you look at the states of Georgia or Pennsylvania, and I mentioned and NBC is one of the websites, but if you're really into this, you need to go find a website that actually has the breakdown of the county by county.
Yes.
So, for example, on my computer, I have Pennsylvania pulled up, and you see all these counties broken down. Now, at the end of the night, the majority of this map is going to be red.
Yeah.
And I can almost guarantee, it's an opinion, but I can almost guarantee it. But what we will be looking at is when you go over to the western part of the state, you're going to look at Allegheny County in Pennsylvania. That is Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So Kamala Harris, when she gets votes in Pennsylvania, that's going to be one of the areas. And then in the far east, there's a little county called Philadelphia that has a large city in it that goes by the same name. Those are going to be the strongholds for the Democratic vote,
Yes.
at least in national elections. Now, if you read articles, one of the counties to look at that is a good barometer of how things are going is Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And now Bucks County, Pennsylvania is a county just north of Philadelphia. It's a suburb. How do the votes go there this evening? And the other thing to look at in Pennsylvania and some of these other states, you have a very tight Senate race.
Yes.
You have a longtime Democrat incumbent in Bob Casey. Polls show him up a point or two, depending on what you look at. But McCormick is the Republican. He's running. Does that have any impact? What I would look at early on is if McCormick is doing well and outperforming polls in the Senate race, that's probably a good sign for Donald Trump.
Okay. Yeah, you tie some of those things to the top of the ticket. Just a quick update just on NBC News. Of course, a couple of states have called already. Indiana and Kentucky both called for Donald Trump, and then Vermont called for Kamala Harris. So that's early as all get out. And, again, those are just the numbers coming from NBC News. But we'll keep our eyes on that. I do like that you found NBC News, by the way. It's a very quick update.
Yeah,
I like
you
that.
can click the different counties, states, and so forth. And frankly, when the polls close at 7:30 here in West Virginia, Metro News is the one who we really follow.
Yeah.
They're going to call Donald Trump's going to win the state.
Yeah. At 7:30 in 5 seconds. In the early season, it's going to take 5 seconds because somebody has to flip that switch on at Metro News and say, and then they'll call Donald Trump. So.
And a lot of the statewide races are probably going to be like that, and that's going to be because of the strong Republican majority in this state. Now, the one thing we haven't touched on, though, there is an amendment to the West Virginia Constitution.
Okay.
That was on the ballot. You might, my for or against it, dealing with. I'm going
to stop you.
Yeah, you go ahead and you tell me what it was for.
What the
so
stipulations are for our lives.
So, due to us not wanting to get kicked off of our social media broadcast, the state amendment, and Josh, what was the number on that amendment? I've got to pull. Give me just a second here. I'll pull it up.
I'm not going to talk. I don't want to get shut down.
Okay. Now I know I have it.
See, you were even afraid to type it up, and I
Yeah. Trust me, I saw it too. I do know that it's on there.
Okay. It's the protection of persons against medically assisted, and there's another word after that.
Quote, but we can say this word. Right?
Yeah.
Quote, self-harm.
Yeah, and we can't say the actual word that was on the bill because social media will kick us off of our broadcasts on that. So we are changing that word, and if you need to look up, it's House Amendment number 1 if you want to look up the full official title, but we're going to call it the medically assisted self-harm
just
amendment.
to try to avoid getting knocked off.
But
Yes.
this will be interesting. I think there was a lot of confusion.
Yes.
About this
absolutely.
amendment. I had people calling me today, even after they voted, thinking, I don't know really which way I voted for this, the way it was worded. If you voted yes, that meant there's going to be an amendment to the Constitution that, this assisted self-harm is not allowed in the state of West Virginia. I think some people thought when they vote for, they thought they were voting that should be
Right.
allowed. So it was a little bit confusing.
Yeah, because the title said one thing, and then when you read just the little 2-3 line description, it kind of contradicted itself. So then you don't know which way you're wanting to go on that.
And personally, I haven't, and this is just personal Josh opinion, I haven't seen much campaigning advertising for the amendment.
Right.
The things I have seen, whether it be a commercial on local TV or Facebook, has been against it.
Yeah.
So that's a interesting one to see which direction that goes tonight.
Yeah, that'll be one that we're going to keep our eyes on, of course. Some of the West Virginia races, of course, that we've got our eyes on is, of course, the governor of West Virginia. Of course, Jim Justice is now running for the Senate for the United States. And, of course, so you've got a bunch on the ticket here, Josh. You've got a Mountain Party candidate, a Libertarian candidate, Republican, a Democrat, and what is C? S. Marshall Wilson. I couldn't come up with that.
Constitution Party.
Constitution Party.
Yeah, I believe that's right.
So you got Chase Linko Looper, Erica Kolinich, Patrick Morrissey, S. Marshall Wilson, and Steve Williams in that race.
And Drew, and once again, this is one. Steve Williams is the Republicans are obviously Patrick Morrissey. Steve Williams is the I believe 3-term mayor of Huntington. That's a large mountain to climb, just financially. Patrick Morrissey probably had, if you follow politics, one of the biggest war chest of any politician in this state of West Virginia in a long time for these state races. And Steve Williams ran some ads. I've seen him on TV, did some mailers, but especially in the, it was a hotly contested governor's primary on the Republican Party.
Oh,
and I was getting 3 or 4 mailers a day from Patrick Morrissey.
Yeah, that's what is interesting when it came to the state races. I mean, you almost couldn't open up your mailbox in a primary because of all the mailers. And in the general, I don't know about you guys, but I haven't gotten not even a fraction as many as I did in the primary.
Well, Jim Justice, right or wrong, he refused to debate his candidate. Patrick Morrissey did have a debate with Steve Williams. But yes, some of it's such a Republican majority in today's world. Yeah, we're not having the debates, and you just don't see the money spent that was spent in the primaries.
Right. And going back to my numbers earlier, it is interesting because in 2016, in Roane County, we had the largest voter turnout in 20 years, and that was a pretty heavy Republican turnout, at least for the state and national races. And then 2020, that was our lowest numbers in 20 years. And then you saw to go across the board nationwide, it shifted.
Now that 2016 year was an interesting election, though.
That was.
And reason being, that only happens every 24 years. It's because of our common denominator. We have in West Virginia, we have Supreme Court justices that have 12-year terms. Circuit Court judge have 8-year terms. We have clerks who have 6-year terms. And so every 24 years.
I feel like you're taking me back to math class.
Yeah, I know I am, and I'm really proud of the education I got at Reedy Elementary. But every 24 years, everybody's on the ballot. So that ballot in 2016 was huge because you were voting for everything.
Yeah,
everybody had an interest in that race. So that's probably why those numbers were so high.
Yeah, and then 2020, the numbers tapered off to our lowest, and I'm talking across the board in 20 years. 2020 was the lowest voter turnout in early voting.
Right.
And that's why I'm using my high water mark is what early voting looks like, give you an idea of where we're going on this. And then this year's.
You were also dealing with COVID years, too.
Yeah.
You got to remember that.
So 2020 was a whole circus in of itself, and so that was a whole mess. So you had that going on. And then now this year's early voting turnout is blown 2016 out of the water. So what does that – and in the grand scheme of things, Roane County, we're a small rural county. So let's take it out of Roane County. If this is an inclination, what's the rest of the state going to look like, and what's it going to do nationally? If we're seeing signs like this here, what's everybody else looking like?
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see because, when I first saw those high voter turnouts early voting, it's great, it's wonderful.
Yes.
It crossed my mind, and I hate to say this, well, does that mean everybody's already voted?
Yeah.
And the polls aren't going to be that busy actually on election day. But at least, like you said, Cena went around, and the folks in her office just doing the everyday thing of going and filling paper in the machines and so forth. It's part of their jobs, and from what we've heard, it's been steady crowds.
Yeah, and that's what I was teasing her last week. I said, well, I said, at the rate you're going, because they was averaging at least 200 people every day for early voting. I said, at the rate you're going, I said, you're not going to have anybody turn out on election day. You're just going to be sitting in your office, and it has been complete opposite. I talked to her this morning. She was on her way to Harper Church to work on some stuff out there, and she'd already stopped at 3 other precincts before she had gotten there. And then I talked to her this afternoon, and she's just been on the go. So it's crazy on how far this has gone, and this has been a huge jump just from the primary. The primary, we only had 11% turnout for early voting in the primary.
Right. It's very interesting. It's it has to be the presidential election, because it's just there are some contested races, and we'll run through the rest of the state ones in a minute. But like I said, they're not. A lot of people think they know what's going to happen just because of the turnout. And some of those, the Attorney General's race, this is the position that was opened up when Patrick Morrissey decided to run for governor. J.B. McCuskey is the Republican in that race. Teresa Torzerva, and I probably pronounced her name incorrectly, and I apologize, but it's the Democrat. Secretary of State, Chris Warner is running that. Not everybody's very familiar with his brother, Mike Warner.
Yes.
Who ran for governor, so didn't run for Secretary of State. So his brother, Chris Warner, steps in to run against the Democrat Thornton Cooper. The Warner name recognition will be a big deal in that race. Yeah. Mark Hunt is running for state auditor against Democrat Marianne Clater. Ms. Clater's ran for that position a couple times. Won a contested Democrat primary before in that race. Larry Pack, we've already said, is running unopposed for state treasurer, which is interesting. He's running unopposed but still running ads on TV. Very pro-Trump Republican ads. And the Commissioner of Agriculture, Deborah Stiles, is running against the incumbent Kent Leonhardt. So you probably have to favor all the Republicans in these races just for the name recognition. But you got the Democrat Party in the state of West Virginia, the numbers are down at the moment, but they worked hard and got people in some of these contested races. So.
And the thing of it is, that there's going to be some party floppers. There are going to be some Democrats vote for Republicans and vice versa. So, Josh, and I'm not talking local races, I'm just talking state races, what are the chances of us seeing a flip-flop? Everybody's expecting, just a clean sweep across the state for state positions being Republicans. What's the chances of seeing just a flip-flop to make things interesting?
Low. and here's why. And I'm not trying to make people mad.
Right.
And there's a few why I say low.
It's the numbers.
Right. It's the numbers right now. You have Donald Trump is doing so well in the state of West Virginia.
Yeah.
He's going to pull voters. Jim Justice favorability rating is very high. So those are going to pull the numbers. And some of it, and then you look at the factors of Chris Warner is running in the position that his brother Mac Warner, and people have voted for Mac Warner before, so they get comfortable voting for.
I think there's a good Eddie Murphy movie about that. Yeah. Jeff Johnson, the name you know.
So what we'll look at is how close, if it is a sweep by the Republicans in all these state races, how close are the percentages?
Yeah.
Does J.B. McCuskey run at the same number as Chris Warner? Do they run at the same number as Donald Trump, Jim Justice? That'll be an interesting number to look at.
So we've got all of those state races. Of course, there are 17 state Senate races. 7 of those 17, by the way, are unopposed races. And then a full 100 for House of Delegates. Of course, we've got one of those races in Roane County and Work County. Of course, Erica Moore, the incumbent, and Juliana Penfold. Those two are going at it here tonight. And again, the polls will close, folks, in about 9 minutes here in Roane County and in West Virginia, and then we'll start to get some of those local and state races going, and we'll be able to get some information to you guys very quickly. And, of course, we'll keep our eyes as well on the national race. Of course, lots to be determined here tonight. We're going to go radio silent for just a second while I get to the station. We're going to go live on the radio in just a few seconds. Hang tight, folks.
Austin and Crazy, called Crazy right here at Mountain Country 104.7. And the guys are down at the courthouse broadcasting live for the election coverage. Drew, Joe, you guys just need to, and Josh, need to take it all away.
Thank you very much, George. Do appreciate you sticking around for tonight so we could go live not only on the station's site at WVRCFM.com with streaming audio. Of course, those of you in the listening area are tuned in just to our old-fashioned web or our old-fashioned Facebook, or not Facebook, our old-fashioned radio station handle. You'd think I'd know that after 3.5 years at 104.7 FM. But again, with the technology the way it is, we're happy to join people who have been with us on our streams of YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch. We are live right here in the courthouse. We're in the deed room, surrounded by all these crazy old books, and it's very exciting for us. And we've been talking a good bit about the upcoming results that are going to start flowing in here in West Virginia. The polls in West Virginia are about to close, about 7 more minutes. And again, it'll take a little time for us to get some results in here locally because they've got to get some of those precincts in. Now, there are some precincts very close, so we'll be able to get some information quickly. And then you're talking about precincts out in the southern part of the county that are going to take some time to get in. Locally, guys, once again, we'll talk. We don't have a lot of contested races locally. One of the contested races that we do have is for House of Delegates in 8. Is that right? District 8, if I was thinking correctly.
I believe so.
You've got the incumbent, which is Erica Moore, and you've got the newcomer and Juliana Penfold. Those two are squaring off here in this race. Most of what we're going to be talking about locally, once again, are these levies. 4 levies on the docket. Again, 3 of those levies are the old-fashioned rule of 60% yay to pass. But the one that we're looking at, that 4th one, is only a 50.1% passing rate, and that is that school levy. And, Josh, as you mentioned the last time we were on, you talked about it, you said, traditionally here in Roane County, excess levies for school systems have had a tough time passing. But in the past, that was a 60% rule as well. That has changed now to only 50% simple majority.
Right, and so that's what we'll be looking at tonight and see if history repeats itself or is that school levy going to pass. You know, you talk to some people that talk politics a long time in Roane County. You know, the voting, the bigger voting blocks, obviously right around here, Spencer. So we don't get precinct by precinct breakdowns anymore. So we can't say this was, Clover or this is the Spencer Roane firehouse. We just know votes are coming in.
Yeah, Spencer said yes, but Clover said no.
Yeah,
they have killed Josh's Kornacki.
I know.
But
what
we do know is the first numbers we get are probably going to be the more local Spencer precincts. That's just common sense. So if you're supporting one of those levies, you want good numbers early.
Yes.
Traditionally. That's traditionally. Now, I don't know if there's anything traditional about any of these elections. You know, I'm looking – I know we're talking about local races, but right now I'm looking at presidential stuff too. And in Georgia, there's been 222,000 ballots counted, and Donald Trump's winning by 12,000. So that shows you how close that's going to be. So, but yeah, these levies here, does the school levy break the trend? Does being on the ballot with 3 other levies that have to carry 60%, the fire, the services levy, the fire and ambulance, senior nutrition, the library, the patch, that have traditionally done well.
Yes.
Does that help the school? You know, do people get in there in the ballot and just say, okay, vote 4, 4, 4, 4, or is there a reverse? You know, that's the numbers we're looking at.
Those other 3, by the way, are rollovers because they already are active levies that have been passed. So the senior services is something that is currently happening. Patch levy is currently happening, and of course the fire and ambulance services and the libraries, that is currently active as well. So the question is everybody just going to continue to support that? And then you've got this outlier that needs less support But again, as you mentioned, in years past, we've had some problems passing those excess levies.
Right, and the people, trying to pass that levy, have they found the sweet spot? They've ran a few of them the past few years. That obviously didn't get the attention of the voters to get the support, so they've tweaked it. And there's been some signs out this time and some organized support for it. So we'll see if that makes a difference later tonight.
And what really makes it interesting is if we look at the early voters, because usually the early voting turnout can give you an indication of where things are going to go. But with such a huge early voting turnout, and from what we're hearing, a huge turnout for Election Day, I don't think the early voting, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I don't think early voting is going to be much of a signal on the levy side of where this could go.
Yeah, I think that's not a partisan issue. That's just you have no idea.
Yeah.
That is something that numbers are going to have to come in to see, because people vote independently when it comes to that stuff. That is not something that is party line based.
Well,
so.
and with the huge turnout for early voting, you would think there's not much of a turnout on Election Day, so that'd give you a good set point. Well, from what we're hearing, there was just as many people turning out on Election Day. So,
yes,
if you get a fair same amount on both sides, on early voters versus on Election Day, I can't see that an early voting point being an actual point of interest of saying, okay, put a pin on this. This is where it could go.
Well, Josh, number one is, as someone who has fought elections a long time that you have, and this is very interesting to you, and it's very exciting to you. It's got to be exciting to see high numbers. High turnout numbers, no matter what.
Absolutely, and and it's real. We've talked about this a little bit tonight. I wish we had 95 to 100% turnout. That's what we want, and the reality is, at least the past, if we hit 50%, we're going to be excited about that. I remember some of the special elections that we had in here, and when Charlie White before Cena was in here, Joe, and we were having 8 and 9% turnout. It was horrible. But, yeah, you got to be excited. It is interesting that, it's got to be the presidential election that's pulling a lot of this. It's getting people's interest. And it's still pulling that interest in a state that's probably going to go for Donald Trump. My guess is at 7:30, my opinion, here in about a minute away, maybe by the time we're done with this radio cast, this segment, Metro News is going to call the state of West Virginia for Donald Trump.
Probably.
We saw it earlier, I think, with Indiana and Kentucky. As soon as the polls closed, those states were called for Donald Trump, and I think the same for Vermont went for Harris.
Very quickly.
Very quickly. So West Virginia is going to be in that category for Trump, but we're still getting extremely high turnout.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. That's a really good thing.
Yeah, that's at the end of the day, regardless of which side of the fence you're on, getting out and making your voice heard, making your vote count, that's what matters. And the three of us will agree on that. And it doesn't matter what side of the table you're sitting on, as long as you get out and make your voice heard. And what was it you said earlier, Josh?
Oh, yeah, if you don't vote, don't complain.
There you go.
You can't complain about – if you didn't vote today, you can't complain about presidential politics for the next 4 years.
Exactly.
That's my opinion. So just keep it to yourself. And Drew hit an interesting point, too, of these levies, jumping back to those. This is now 4 levies on the ballot.
Yeah.
And at a certain point – do voters start, when you're voting for a levy, you're agreeing to say, I should pay this. I think this is a cause that our tax dollars should go to, and we should have that very slight increase. But, you do that once, you do that twice. One of the number one issues, national politics, is the economy. You hear words like inflation. Does that start coming into play? And if you're a supporter for any of these levies, that's probably in the back of your mind, and that's what you're worried about a little bit.
By the way, fellas, 7:31 officially, West Virginia called for Donald Trump. So, and of course, that's NBC News. We're on NBC News' website. That we don't care whether it's any of them. We don't care what it is. Josh just knows that that's a very quick update site, and also you're able to go to individual states, individual places in those states. So it's just fun for us to keep an eye on the national election situation, of course, the national races. And again, the polls now officially in West Virginia are closed. Cena's taking a big old sigh of relief for about 3 seconds, and then they're going to the other hard work.
I was going to say, I think she inhaled, but she won't exhale that breath until after everything's finished tonight.
Well, we should tell her she could have went to Pennsylvania or Georgia or Arizona and helped out with one of those.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she will be sleeping much better
Yes.
than the folks down there.
Yes.
So, and we can't ignore the presidential race tonight. You know, everybody knows what's going on. Georgia is one of those 7 swing states that everybody's talking about. And for example, and you know, if you're a Trump person, you're really excited at the moment because you see that Trump is carrying Georgia 58-41. So you're excited, but you got to look at those if you're really into this, you got to look at those individual maps. For example, Donald Trump in the state of Georgia right at the moment has 240,000 votes to Kamala Harris's 171. So you're feeling really good. But when you look at the map, that doesn't include any votes from Fulton County, Georgia, which is Atlanta.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of, and that's what you're going to see in national politics. You're going to see that in Georgia. You're going to see that in Pennsylvania, where Trump's going to do very well in the less populated, more rural counties. Kamala Harris will hope to do extremely well and will do well in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of national politics. So that's some of the fun stuff to look at if you're into that.
Yeah, the website I've been watching, it's an estimator, and I don't know all the metrics. I'm not getting into that, but Georgia was in favor of Trump on this estimator site. Now it's kind of a lighter shade of red. It wasn't a hard red. And the rest of the swing states, Pennsylvania, it's showing purple because it's literally split right down the middle right now. Michigan's like a light blue, and then Wisconsin's still purple. But I tell you, it's getting interesting.
Yeah, and what people, the 8 o'clock is going to be a big hour on national politics because at that point, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania will close.
Yeah.
National, if Donald Trump wins Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, if he does the sweep of those first 3 states, he's probably won the presidential election. That's the reality to it. But just because the polls close at 8 o'clock, we're not going to know the results.
No. Well, we shouldn't. I'll put it that way.
Right.
Obviously, projections are coming in nationally for the state of West Virginia. Projection is that Jim Justice, with no votes in right now, is going to win that Senate seat in the national race. And, of course, they've got Morrissey projected. And, again, we don't have any input yet, but the projections are that people are looking at that big red wave in West Virginia that has happened over the last few years. And, Josh, it's just one of those things that people are pretty confidently saying.
Right. It's just a switch, and, you know, and this is politics. Like we mentioned earlier, 40 years ago, it was the exact opposite. These races were being called because the Democratic Party had such an advantage in numbers and in positions and name recognition. You know, the races, a lot of the contested races were in primaries, just they were this past primary in the Republican Party. So that's why you're going to see some big numbers for Republicans in West Virginia. There's a good chance that they're going to sweep that Board of Works. They're going to Attorney General, Secretary of State, Auditor, Treasurer, and Commissioner of Agriculture. Yeah. One thing we talked about is to see how close their percentages are. That will be
that's the looks that we're going to go for. Well, folks, again, we are live on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch. We're going to stay live throughout this broadcast. We're going to check in frequently, by the way, on the radio. The next time we come onto the radio, we hope to have some actual local results because the polls close at 7:30, and by 8 o'clock, we're going to be about 8:10 when we go live on the radio once again. Hopefully we'll have some of those results from those. The one major local race, which is House of Delegates, District 8, between Eric
15.
Moore. 15, thank you. I knew 8 wasn't right. I don't know what I was
Senate race 8.
Thank you.
There we go.
So District 15 between Erica Moore and Juliana Penfold. And, of course, our focus locally is on the levies. We're looking forward to finding out the situation with the levies. Again, 60% needed for 3 of them, 50%, well, I should say 60+. 50+ for the school levy as well. We're going to send it back up to the studio. If you want to join us live, if you're not right now, join us live on our YouTube and Facebook and the rest of those streams. We're going to stay live and continue coverage here of Election Night 2024 on WVRC. Because of people tuning in already, and Robin Bloom says, "Baby dog is going to Washington."
Yeah, baby dog's going to Washington. And I gotta say too, Joe, this is your energy drink here. This is not a certain flavored tea that people have been sending me message about. This
No.
this is an energy drink. We're
Yes,
still
there
on-
may be there may be some people out there who are going to do that tonight.
Right.
Yeah, whether celebratory or
one way or the other,
feeling
yeah.
bad.
I will pass a breathalyzer test with this drink. I need the caffeine.
Yeah, by the way, this is straight caffeine too.
And look at Josh over here looking healthy with his water.
Well, I try. It's going to be an interesting night, guys. We're back to this presidential election. And like I said, I really encourage everybody, if you enjoy this, or maybe you enjoy it too much, maybe you shouldn't look at these. But, find you a good website. The one we're following is NBC News, just because I like the maps and how it breaks it down. And Georgia is one of the big swing states that has closed here at 7:30. Donald Trump at the moment is doing very well. But what's coming in is there's more. I mean, it's like we talked about. The state's starting to fill in. It's going to look red, but you got to look at some of those bigger counties. You got to look at Fulton County, which is where Atlanta is. You got to look at some of the college towns traditionally are a strong Democrat. Where the University of Georgia is. That's something that will come into play in Wisconsin. How well does Kamala Harris do in Madison?
Yeah.
Where the University of Wisconsin is, that's going to be very important to them. And then, of course, here at 8 o'clock, if you follow politics at all, Pennsylvania is probably the most important state. Yeah. Both parties would tell you that it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
A lot of pundits, Josh, have said through the last couple of weeks, and especially this last week, that it comes down to Pennsylvania.
Right.
Yeah, one of the sites I've been looking at, it's a Cashly or Cowshy, I'm not even sure how to name it. It's a estimator, and right now they're showing here's the map, and for Georgia they're estimating Trump pulling 75% of the vote. Pennsylvania, Trump pulling 51. Michigan, they're looking like Harris is going to pull it. Wisconsin, it could go Harris, and Arizona is a hard red on for Trump.
Michigan's going to be an interesting state. And a lot of that is going to be, there was a big deal made at the president of the Teamsters. He did not endorse a candidate.
Yeah.
But went to the Republican National Convention. And is there, historically, the union vote has went Democrat in these presidential elections.
Yes.
There have been some unions that just haven't endorsed anybody. And it will be interesting, Donald Trump's made some big claims about what he's going to do for the auto industry and stuff. Is there going to be a shift in Michigan that these polls aren't seeing, or is that stronghold going to stay with the Democrat Party, and are those going to be votes for Harris?
And then there's a lot of interesting over the last 24 hours, kind of the 11th hour promotions from the celebrity side. Joe Rogan came out late last night and said he backs Trump. I saw an article today where Dr. Phil backed off of Harris. Didn't promote Trump, but he was kind of backpedaling on Harris. So how does that play into? I mean, obviously, early voters doesn't matter, but on the people that are voting the day of, does that help out in any way the people that like to go for the Hollywood vote?
And as someone who graduated with political science degree, the one thing that's so interesting to me too is we have to remember 120 days ago, Kamala Harris wasn't the candidate.
Yeah.
And so they have pulled this together that quickly. And if Trump wins tonight, will political scientists and people look at this, look back at that, and just, I think Donald Trump has been running for president since the last presidential election. That's the reality.
Yeah.
He has been running for president for 4 years.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris is not. She's been running for president for 4 months.
Right, and that's where it makes the waters choppy for the Democrat Party, because there are Democrats that I didn't vote for her. Mm-hmm. That's not who I voted for. So do they just not vote at all? Do they leave that box blank? Or do they flip to Trump? Or do they flip to a third-party candidate? And that's the thing. This is where you're the expert on this, Josh. How?
Yeah, and then the other factor you look at these national politics is Robert Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
He was running as that third party, drops out, endorses Trump. Trump's had him at his campaign events, but his name is still on some of the ballots in these states, even though he filed lawsuits to get them off.
Yeah.
Right.
And in some of these states, we're talking about 10, 15,000 votes or less determining the election.
One of those states.
How many votes does RFK pull from the person that he's actually endorsed?
Some of those states, including the most recent poll that was kind of wacky for people, was Iowa, in which he is still on the ballot in Iowa. And so that was a weird kind of outlier poll that came out just a couple of days ago. And again, you think, well, how much will that affect it?
Yeah, it was a poll that had, Donald Trump has been up in polls in Iowa the entirety of this. That's a state that goes Republican traditionally. And then a poll came out within a week saying he was down. Is that an outlier? Are we guessing? Is there a group that we're underestimating? I mean, clearly in 2016, the Trump voter was underestimated.
Yeah.
Is it, there's lots of different issues. Is it what is going to be the driving issue? Is it going to be the economy? Is it going to be conflict in the Middle East? Is it going to be the abortion? What is going to drive people to the border? I mean, what is the issue?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Josh, so I have a question, and this question was posed to me earlier, and I have no idea on the answer. Okay, so let's play crazy game here. Let's say Kennedy pulls a couple states and enough where Harris nor Trump get 270. What happens then?
Full-on chaos.
Yeah, that's why I'm not even going to try to get into it. I mean, it's been too long since I've been to constitutional law. It involves the House, and it's a mess.
Okay.
Just like if there's a dead even tie, the House gets involved. And
okay, I'll take that. It's a mess. That's all. I'll take that, sir.
Let me go ahead and tell you what I'm going to do. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to my bunker.
Okay. Okay. That's a fair enough
Yeah.
answer, sir. I could not ask for more.
Right. So, but it's going to be some really important states going on. Like I said, right now Donald Trump's doing really well in Georgia. 61. He's carrying 61% right now, but those big urban areas have not come in
just
yet.
13% of the vote.
Yeah, so that's going
moment.
that's going to close. So if you're a Trump voter, don't get too excited, and if you're a Harris voter, stay tuned. Don't give up yet. So
Right.
it's going to be a interesting evening when it comes to that. Like I said, at 8 o'clock, I believe that's North Carolina closing and Pennsylvania closing, I believe, at those times. So that's going to be a really important time to look at.
Holy cow. I just updated the Kalshi website. Trump jumped 11 points since last time I refreshed. And the callers are staying the same in all the battleground states. Trump's still pulling the lead in Pennsylvania. No change in the others. And then, yeah.
And Joseph, those are betting odds.
Yeah,
that's the new thing now that, people have gotten away from the polls, so now they're looking at betting odds, and people like to say the House always wins. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, this site here just makes it fun.
Hey, we've got our first set of statewide race information, still incredibly early, but in the governor's race with, again, 0 precincts reporting. They've just got some early voting totals. Steve Williams with a very narrow lead at the moment, 49%, 47%, 12,077 to 11,464 for Patrick Morrissey. And again, that is extremely early.
Right. And I'll tell you what that could be, because like I said, that would be a major upset if that happened. That's just the reality of numbers. But where Steve Williams should do well, there's a good chance he'll win Cabell County. He is the longtime mayor of Huntington. And his name is probably more recognizable in Kanawha County, which is one of the last Democrat areas in the state at the time. So that's probably where those precincts are coming in. But we'll have to wait and see if that's a trend that's going to keep up through the night. So very interesting.
Yeah, the Cabell County will be an interesting one, because if he can't pull his county,
oh yeah,
you just call it right then and there.
Right, and if you look too at the other state races, you see how evenly split it is. So that tells me at the moment those are at least some stronger traditional Democrat precincts coming in. But once again, we'll have to wait and see. They're not even reporting the number of precincts out of 1,657. So it's extremely early.
Yeah, just some early numbers. J.B. McCuskey leading close in the Attorney General race. Chris Warner leading close in the Secretary of State race. 50-50, separated by like 15 votes right now. Mark Hunt and Marianne Clater. Of course, Larry Pack, unopposed. But then Kent Leonhardt with 45% lead. And again, no precincts reported. These are just very, very early totals. But it's fun to look at numbers, all right?
It is fun to look at numbers, and it's exciting. You know, this is – you know, these people who've been running, this has been going on for a year now. That's the reality now when you run even some of these local races. So it's a very exciting that we're finally to that point tonight.
Yeah, I tell you, it has been a long and treacherous campaign this year. And, you know, a lot of people are excited about tonight, but a lot of people as well are to that point where they're just ready for it to be done and ready to move on. And so if you're of either of those two, whatever happens tonight, you're going to be done. You're going to feel okay. You're going to be done.
Well, I'm trying to figure out.
And I'm going to cheat a little bit, those votes, because what you got to do is you got to go look at the House of Delegates votes. And they're coming out of Monongalia County right now.
Okay.
So that's Morgantown. So that's where those early votes are coming from. So good for them, which is, you know, home base for Metro News, which also makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, they might have a connection down to the courthouse.
Yeah, they better have a connection.
Yeah, they probably have got one right there. But, yeah, before long, like I said, I don't we'll want to see what those early numbers are in the House of Delegates race here in Roane County. See if we can get an idea if that's going to be close or if there's going to be an early spread in that race. And, like I said, really interested to look at those levies. One thing I think I'm personally most is how close they run together. You know,
exactly.
Do one of these levies carry 80%?
Yes.
You know, and does another one carry? So it'll be really interesting if this is just voters are going in there and say, all right, I've made up my mind. I'm just going to vote for them all, or they're going to pick and choose. So that'll be very interesting numbers to look at.
Yeah, just looking at some early numbers nationwide. Again, still very, very early in a lot of these races. No one else has called a state just yet. Of course, the states that NBC has called in the presidential election for Donald Trump. Of course, West Virginia about a half a minute after we closed the polls. Kentucky and Indiana, and then again still Vermont for Kamala Harris. And a lot of these are shaded now, so a lot of these polls have closed. Polls closing in Ohio, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And those are the numbers that we're able to watch move as we go through. And, again, there'll be some other ones closing here at 8 o'clock. And we are just kind of right now, guys, in that little waiting game, that period where we're waiting for some local numbers to come in, and we're waiting to watch some of these statewide and national numbers start to build up.
Right. And like I said, and, you know, as more polls start to close in other states, North Carolina, Pennsylvania coming up, you know, we've hit on some of these, you know, the places that were frankly destroyed by the flooding in North Carolina. They're dealing with that tragedy. How does that vote affect the ability of those individuals to vote? Look at some of the Senate races in these states. Pennsylvania's got a U.S. Senate race up. Casey, the Democrat, is the incumbent. Let's see what that race does compared to the presidential election. If you're a Republican and you're supporting Trump, you want to see McDermott do well. If McDermott comes out and wins that race, that probably bodes well for Donald Trump. Trump's projected to win Ohio. That's, I don't think, a state that anybody thinks is really in play, but there's kind of a high-profile Senate race in Ohio that folks here in West, we get the carryover ads from the state of Ohio with Sherrod Brown, the incumbent Democrat, and Bernie Moreno is the Republican. So races that we don't get to vote on but still might have a little bit of interest in. If nothing else, we've seen them on TV.
Yeah, just taking a look through those to try to find some of these races to watch.
I'm going to say NBC News is reporting Trump pulling 23 of the electoral votes, Harris only pulling 3 as of right now. Again, like the guys are saying, these are just estimated. The Senate's looking like it's 40 for Republicans, 29 on the Democrat side. And then for the House, it's 26 Republicans and 8 for the Democrats. Right now, this is all based on NBC News.
Yeah, and polling nationally, I think most people in this area project the Republican Party or expect the Republican Party to win the U.S. Senate. Projections have been for Democrats to take the House, which would be a flip, which is you'll still have a split government, but you're going to have a split of the houses. So that's kind of an interesting thing to look at. So, yeah, it's going to be an exciting night. You know, we will probably be off the air and falling asleep in our recliners before we know the outcome of this.
Or nervously sitting watching the TV, one or the other.
Yeah, one way or the other, depending on how, and I'll go ahead and say some of these people who get too attached, you might just have to go. It might be for your own good. Just go to bed in the morning.
Yeah, let that be tomorrow's problem.
Yeah, but as I'm sitting there at 3 o'clock in the morning, refreshing.
I was going to say, you hear that, Mom, out there?
Yeah.
Just relax. Very early numbers in those interesting Senate races. Right now, Sherrod Brown, 54% to 43% lead. Again, 9% is all that is registered in Ohio right now. And again, looking at the rest of them, I don't think any of the rest of those very interesting races yet have closed their polls. So we'll be looking at all this stuff with you all. And, of course, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people out there who are watching us who are multitasking themselves, guys. They probably have 3 TV. It's almost like football season. They got 3 TVs up. They're watching 3 different things, and they've got their laptops out, and they're pulling up different websites. We're all a little bit crazy here, all right? Yeah. We're all a little bit nuts.
Right, and and that Sherrod Brown, Bernie Moreno, it's the same. It's the exact opposite of Georgia at the moment. We said, hey, Trump's way up in Georgia, so if you're a Trump supporter, you're jumping up and down. But that was with no votes from Fulton County, which is Atlanta. It's kind of the opposite in Ohio now. If you're a Republican and you're watching that Senate race, Brown, the incumbent, I think you said was up about 8 points at the moment.
Yeah.
But there's been about 200,000 votes come out of Franklin County, Ohio, which is Columbus. And he is carrying that county by 70%. So that is a stronghold for the Democrat Party in the state of Ohio. So you got to remember, you cannot base a lot of times these races on when you have 8, 9, 10% reporting.
Yeah, and right now, in the same county, they're showing Harris with 169,000 votes, and Trump only pulling 71,000.
Right. So they're running very similar there. So another county, if you keep up with these things, another important county to look at in the state of Ohio is Cuyahoga County. Cuyahoga County is up by the lake. That is Cleveland.
Yes.
So traditionally a very strong county for Democrat voters in national type of elections.
Yeah, and it's a clean Democrat on both the Senate and the presidential. So you're pulling up the Senate, and I've got the presidential pulled up.
Right. So they look for example, if you look at Cuyahoga County with me, Joe, what Sherrod Brown is carrying that county by 72%. And what is Kamala Harris at?
71.2.
So they are running identical. So that's why we're saying it is so important to look at these big Senate races.
Yeah.
They are going to run very, very similar.
Now, Josh, how often does it go? Could it split? The Senate pulls red or blue, and the presidential pulls the opposite color.
Oh, I think it's possible. And when you talk about races and polling showing 1%, at that point you're getting down to people's personalities.
Yeah.
Which is really, really, and then you got to look at, who's the incumbent and so forth. So, but yeah, it can happen. And if it's going to happen, it's probably going to be an election like this. But it could be what I'm looking for.
But this is a good indicator.
This is a good, and what I'm looking for is if one of these Senate races pull out, it's not a 1 or 2 point win. Does Sherrod Brown, the incumbent, end up winning, even though we think Ohio is going to go for Trump? Does he pull up by 5 or 6%?
Yeah.
And that's really important in a state like Philadelphia. That's Bob Casey, the incumbent, all of a sudden, does he stay up 6 or 7 points in that Senate race?
Yeah.
That's probably going to be a good sign for Harris at that. Does Moreno, not in Philadelphia, does McDermott jump up a 3 or 4% lead, the Republican, then that's going to be good for Trump. So those are the type numbers that we're going to be looking for this evening.
Speaking of numbers, got some very quick numbers in. Again, very low results. But for governor right now, Patrick Morrisey, 50% to 46 for Steve Williams, just 1,200 votes separating the two. And again, still 0 precincts in. We're getting some love from the Monongalia people.
And people are saying, how do you know it's Monongalia County? Well, you got to go look at their county by county races or the House, and that's the only race that's got votes in.
Yeah. Speaking of that, we've got Joey Garcia and Rebecca Polis going at it in the 13th Senatorial District for the state Senate, and, of course, that is Marion and Monongalia County. Those are the numbers that have come in.
So, Josh, we haven't talked about Pennsylvania much.
We haven't.
What?
Is that a big deal, this race or something?
Not really.
I heard.
Now,
I
I
heard
want
us-
to tell you, for dinner tonight, just for this, I ate a Philly cheesesteak. Just to get ready for this evening.
Well, I heard a quick smattering of it. So I have seen online where the Amish communities in Pennsylvania have stepped up and participated in this election. You know, the Amish typically stay out of all this. How big of a proponent? Because from the numbers I've seen, about 180,000 people from the Amish community. And I know it's funny. It's not something that we ever hear about, but 180,000 people are hard to ignore.
Especially when we think the state could be decided by less than 20.
Right.
So, and that's is there a group out there? And my guess is if that's true, if that's a group that's traditionally not big voters or and they come out, that's something that could skew a poll.
Yeah.
So those would be the things that we would learn a week or two later, and you start looking at these votes. But that would be which way do they break? That would be interesting. I've also read articles that the Jewish vote has a large Jewish population in the state of Pennsylvania is going to be very important. There's a lot of everything going on in the Middle East, whichever way you fall on that. So that could be a big factor in this race too.
Yeah. So Pennsylvania may break down to like you said, the outliers. These sections of communities or populace that typically you don't. You just kind of group them as a county, but there may be a populace in that county that could.
And like I said, and maybe more than ever when you've got polls showing 1 and 2%. All these polls are all within the margin of error.
Right.
Well, what's the margin of error? It's the unexpected turnout.
Yeah.
It's a larger turnout of that group.
Yeah.
Are women the big turnout this time? Some polls are saying women are voting very heavily. What issue is, a lot of times you see advertising, is it the abortion issue? Is it immigration and safety issue? What is driving that vote? And it's very important. Really, when it's within the margin of error, it's about turnout. Can you get your people out to the polls? I think Trump has shown his supporters are very enthusiastic about his core. Does Kamala Harris have that same core?
Yeah. I'm enjoying just the feeds, the comment sections of our videos. People are having a good time with it. And again, in the absence of driving yourself crazy, have some fun with it this evening.
Right.
So we got a lot of people tuning in and sending us some messages. I got some funny messages on my personal group chat. And my mom is okay. She is trying to get out of the house and watch the dogs for a little bit.
Good.
That will help her. And
well, how about this? Let's make it easier on her. She can go out and walk the dogs after we're done. She can watch us and feel safe, and then after that, she can walk the dogs.
Still looking at early numbers, of course. Governor's race, Patrick Morrissey leading 51% to 44%. 2,075, you're starting to see that lead expand. Again, it is 0 of 1,657 precincts reporting. So, again, we're just trying to give you guys something to think about until we start getting some real numbers.
And it's now 8 o'clock right now.
Yep.
So we have Pennsylvania has closed. So the jewel of this election is closed.
Yep. And so wow. So we have just gotten a ton now.
All right. So
of
I got
updates.
to go back to the gambling site, guys. I got to see. I got to see where. Okay. So Trump went from 6. Okay. So Trump's up by 67 on the betting sites. And I know we sit here and we're joking about this, but this is one of the things I saw a news article talking about. A lot of people were using this as a point to say, okay, where could this go based on the betting odds?
Right. It's stuff they've looked out in the past and said they've done well, but also we're paying more attention to it now. Who knows? And Drew, I am shocked. But no one has called Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Yeah, how could they possibly have not? So here are some states, though, that as soon as the polls closed, these have been called, according to, again, the NBC news site that we are watching. So Donald Trump gaining what we say is called for NBC News, Oklahoma, Missouri, Tennessee, Alabama, and Florida. And then Kamala Harris with Maryland. And what was the other one? Oh, okay, there it is up there, Massachusetts. So those being called very early. As soon as the polls end up closing. Of course, you guys can see that on your screen now. So right now, as of NBC News' graphic, Donald Trump with 90 electoral votes, 27 for Kamala Harris, and surprisingly, Pennsylvania has not been called.
Isn't it funny how it changes each election? The state we used to watch was Florida, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Of course, we had the hanging Chad, but even after that,
hanging Chad.
The hanging Chad. So,
And I even remember Ohio at one point was one of the states to watch.
yeah, Ohio used to be a big barometer for that. So it is very interesting what states really turn on these. And one point, West Virginia was back. Back in the day, in Gore and Bush, West Virginia went for a Republican, and without that, regardless of what happened to hanging Chads in Florida, George W. Bush would not have been president. So we've been there too. It's really interesting things to look at. But yeah, it's very early. And let me see. I see one county in Pennsylvania. It's turned blue.
There we go.
But they haven't even. I believe that is Allegheny. Yeah, it's Allegheny County. And as expected, Kamala Harris is carrying Allegheny County 72 by 72%.
Yeah.
And of course, that's with only about 25% of the votes in. So she should win large in Allegheny County, and she's probably going to win very large in Philadelphia County, which is where the city of Philadelphia is. And
Makes life easy.
Right. So very interesting. So it will be interesting to see as these states start rolling in. And I haven't looked through. Are we getting any more numbers in our statewide races?
We are very, very slow numbers coming in. But, again, I was just looking at the governor's race, and Patrick Morrissey expanding the lead. Again, still no actual precincts, but some early numbers, 21,000 plus to 18,700. 52% to 44%. The lead is out to 8 percentage points for Patrick Morrissey over Steve Williams. Some others just getting a sprinkling of votes. A lead of 31-28 at the moment for the governor's race. Let's look at some of those state races, and let's see if there's any craziness going on right now. Again, it is so unbelievably early. J.B. McCuskey right now with a pretty large lead of 15,000 plus votes, 63%, 37% over Teresa Torreseva. And then Chris Warner, 60% to 40% over Thornton Cooper for Secretary of State. Mark Hunt now has flip-flopped that early race, 58% to 42%. Of course, Larry Pack, unopposed for treasurer. And then Kent Leonhardt leading in the Commissioner of Agriculture race, 61% to 39%. And again, it is extremely early, but those are early numbers for you guys to look at and enjoy.
And Drew, what's interesting about that is all those Republicans, they are running within 5% of the same percentages. I mean, look at the percentages they have. McCuskey, 63. Chris Warner, 60. Mark Hunt, 58. Kent Leonhardt, 61. So it shows you that the voter is in West Virginia is voting for the same candidate when it goes for that Board of Works. And Donald Trump's carrying the statewide vote by 58%. So
That's small. I'm sorry.
No. That will, like I said, that will probably grow as the night goes on. But very similar percentages at this point, at least with the precinct.
Well, I have some good news to report. Well, I don't want to jinx it. So
Some possible good news to report.
Yes. We might be getting some papers very shortly.
Well, that'd be exciting.
That would be fantastic. Local races, again, the polls closed here in West Virginia and in Roane County about 35 minutes ago. And so this is about the time where we'll start to expect some of those local results to start rolling in. Again, 18 precincts here in Roane County. And what we are looking at is just a couple of things. Number one, we're looking at that House of Delegates race in District 15 between the incumbent, Erica Moore, and the challenger, which is Juliana Penfold. And then we're looking at those 4 levies. Those are the big things that we're looking at. There are 4 levies on the list. Again, the school services levy, which is an excess levy, needs 50+ percentage points to pass. And then the other 3, which is the ambulance and EMS and library levy, which again is a rollover levy that's already happening right now. And I was actually talking with a couple of representatives just yesterday on the radio about this levy, and they were talking about how the levy this year, actually, with the way things shook out, is costing less than it has in the past couple of years. So that's something that may actually help out that levy to get a pass. And then, of course, Patch and the senior services levy, which have really not had a problem in the past getting those passed. So, and again, the question is it because it's levy heavy? Are people going to get drowned out with it, or are people just going to say, by golly, or are people going to say, yes, I want all four of these, my community, I want to support them all. So it is, without polling people, we just don't know.
Right. It'll be a very, very interesting number to look at, and hopefully we have those. Now, in the national races, looking at Georgia, one of those swing states that I believe Donald Trump is expected to win of the swing states. He's carrying about 56% at the moment, so the Trump campaign has to be happy with that. And what's interesting is about 50% of the vote in Fulton County is in.
Okay.
So that's Atlanta now. Kamala Harris is doing extremely well in that county. It's expected. She is up in that county alone about 130,000 votes. So really close race there in the state of Georgia that people will want to be watching very, very closely through the evening.
One of those other states that we were talking about earlier with the devastation in North Carolina, how would that shake out? Again, if you just look at very, very early numbers right now, Kamala Harris is leading with 7% is all that we have in, but she's got an early lead in North Carolina. One of those kind of dark horse states that people were talking about, Josh, and I don't know if you can speak to this or not, was New Hampshire. That was one of those dark horse states that somebody said, well, is that one that would be flipped or could be flipped? We're not really sure about. Just looking at the early numbers in that one, it's relatively close, but again, just 10% of the vote in. But that's one of those things that would have been maybe an outlier for the Republican side at the top of the ticket if it were something that could have been flipped.
Sure, and that's the other thing to consider in this race is there a state that everyone thinks they have pegged one way or the other that flips? And when the race is this close, that could be a very important detail. It's like looking at North Carolina, one of the counties that has come in is Wake County, which would be where Raleigh is at. So North Carolina is another state. Where do we got urban areas? We have Raleigh. We have Charlotte. You would expect the Democrat presidential candidate to do well in those large urban areas. The Republican candidate to traditionally do well in some of the more rural areas. So we'll have to see.
And another factor on that, Josh, is, there's talks of mostly Democrats showing up on early votes and being Republican heavy on election day. So these numbers we're seeing could possibly be just early vote numbers, correct?
It depends on how the state counts them.
Okay.
And there's state by state rule. And then, that's an interesting one of the polls you talk about, too, when you're talking some national politics is supposedly, allegedly, however these things work,
right.
The Republican Party saying they were happy with their vote, get out an early vote. So we'll see if maybe that's the new trend. Does the Republican Party nationally get out early voters more? We'll have to wait and see. And Pennsylvania, Kamala Harris is way up at the moment, but when you look at that map, the only counties reporting are Allegheny County, which is Pittsburgh, and then, as we said, Philadelphia is reporting, and then Lancaster in the middle. But to give you an idea, they have reported 700 votes so far. So
in the divide between Harris and Trump in Lancaster County is, you're talking a little over 20 votes. So, I mean, it's tight right there.
Yeah. So, but Allegheny County, she's up 72%, and then Philadelphia 87% at this point. So, but that's to be expected in these type races.
Right.
So we'll see how that goes. And
all right.
Goodness gracious.
By golly.
Okay,
before we go live, Joe, if you want to enter any of those numbers, you can.
Yes,
but
sir.
Folks,
I'll get all those entered in.
Hang tight with us. We're going to go radio silent for a second while I call into the station. We're going to go live with these local numbers here in just 1 second. So those of you watching, just hang tight. We're going to finally have some local race and local levy numbers for you guys in just a sec. Well, thank you once again very much, George Allen. I appreciate you sticking around late for us here tonight while we cover the 2024 general election. And we have been waiting patiently here from our vantage point. If you are tuning in on YouTube and Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch, I just got a lot taller because I am standing up now and not sitting down on my perch. Of course, we've been talking about statewide and national election numbers because we have had the ability to just kind of view a lot of those as the polls are closing. And, of course, we're watching a lot of those state races start to come in now. We're starting to get very, very early state race results as far as, the governor, the auditor, the commissioner of agriculture. All those things are coming in slowly for us. But we have been waiting for local numbers to start coming in. And we finally have our first set of local numbers to talk about. Josh, with the local numbers for these statewide and national races, are you seeing anything trend-wise? Obviously, we kind of assumed that, and of course, very early West Virginia at the top of the ticket was called for former President Donald Trump. The vote totals at the moment in Roane County, what do they match the expectations that you had?
Yes, they are. The Republicans are all running for these statewide national offices, are running very strong in Roane County, and they are all running with very similar percentages. For example, Donald Trump, we'll just talk about those numbers as Joe adds them, but I don't think this is a surprise. This is with 3 precincts in. We don't know which precincts, we just know 3.
Yeah.
But Donald Trump, 2,013 votes. Kamala Harris, 694. So Donald Trump is taking 72.78% of the vote. Now go to Jim Justice. Jim Justice, 1,977. Democrat Glenn Elliott, who's up from the Wheeling area, 679. So once again, Donald Trump, 72.78%. Jim Justice, 72.6%. So, 1/100th of a percentage. So, Carol Miller's carrying 68%. She's gotten 1,805 votes to the Democrat. Bob Reed, 614. Patrick Morrissey, a little bit lower, maybe because Steve Williams is still comfortably winning this race, starting to statewide and in Roane County. 1,736 votes to 832 for Steve Williams. Patrick Morrissey's carrying about 65% of the vote. Chris Warner, who's running to replace his brother Mac for Secretary of State, 1,957 votes to the Democrat. Thornton Cooper, 671. That's 74%.
So what about that name recognition as well?
Right, and there are, in all these races, there's a couple other candidates, but we are just reading right now the top, the Republican and the Democrat, who are the top 2 candidates. Auditor Mark Hunt, 1,934 votes. That's carrying 73.5%. Marianne Clater, 694. That's about 26%. So Republican candidates getting almost identical votes to the Democrats. Larry Pack was unopposed. Kent Leonhardt, 1,907 votes. He's carrying 73% over Deborah Stiles. J.B. McCuskey, 1,947. It's like we're reading the same.
Yeah.
He's carrying 74 to the Democrat, who's carrying 663 votes. So, and Glenn Jeffries was unopposed. So no surprises when it comes to national elections and the statewide elections.
And, of course, we've got Larry Pack, who is running unopposed. Locally for county commissioner, we talked about that earlier. Caleb Greathouse running unopposed. For the prosecuting attorney, Representative Daniel Minardi is unopposed. Philip Deaver for sheriff, again, unopposed. Emily Westfall, once again, for assessor, unopposed. So those are some of those races that were unopposed. Okay, so now that we've talked about all those, everybody's waiting with bated breath. We finally have some results in Roane County. Again, this is 3 precincts reporting, and again, we only have one really major race in our area, and that is House of Delegates 15th District between the incumbent Erica Moore and the Democratic challenger Juliana Penfold.
Right, and Erica, with those 3 precincts in, Erica Moore, 2,124 votes. to Juliana Penfold at 570. That's a 78.8% of the vote that Erica Moore is getting. It's early. It's 3 precincts, but those are huge numbers.
Yeah, and that mirrors a lot of, maybe a little more, but very mirroring the national top of the ticket races here in West Virginia.
Erica Moore is running. She is getting votes that some of the national and statewide candidates are not getting. That's the highest percentage in a contested race we've seen. And I believe we got some information. She also she was doing well in Work County.
Yeah,
so we don't have those precincts in Work County in front of us.
We just had some early vote totals listed. That's in the early vote over in Work County. That's Erica Moore had been leading 705 to 137 in the early vote totals over in Work County. I do appreciate my contact over there for giving us those numbers. And so that's again, it's a representation of what we're seeing in Roane County in the state of West Virginia about those Republican ticket holders. And so that's a big deal.
And we won't do it yet, but frankly, a number that big that early, it would probably be, if this was a national race, or it would probably be called. Those are really big numbers for Erica Moore. So it would have to be a dramatic turn in some of these other precincts. But the other numbers interesting is our levies.
These are the big ones that we're talking about. And again, the emergency services levy, the patch levy, and the senior nutrition levy must hit that 60% plus threshold in order to pass. And again, all 3 of those are rollers. They have passed already. And then the Board of Education levy, the excess levy, must be 50.1%. So we do have some early numbers, guys.
We do. So the emergency services levy, right now, 1,676 votes for, 998 against. So right now, this is with 3 precincts. The emergency service levy is passing with 62.68%.
Close. Skin of the teeth right now, early.
Patch for 1,645 for, 1,027 against. Right now, it is passing with 61.56%.
Yeah, and again, those are very close numbers. But again, it's early totals is what we're looking at here. 3 of the 18 precincts, and they did just give us some new numbers, but we'll work on that here in a little bit.
Senior nutrition levy, pretty comfortable right now.
Yeah.
For the levies, 2017 for, 665 against. It is passing with 75% of the vote, and traditionally that's a levy of all of them that probably passes the easiest of them. Now, here was our question.
This was the uphill battle we were wondering about.
Historically, this Board of Education excess levy, this is not a bond levy, this is an excess levy, has had difficulties in this county. And right now, 1,137 for, 1,505 against. So right now, the Board of Education levy is only carrying 43%. So for that levy to pass, that's a lot of makeup.
Really. Right now you're looking at least 400 votes that must be made up. And again, we are 3 of 18 precincts right now, so we don't know what the final numbers will be, but we do appreciate you guys. We finally have some totals for you.
And while we're on the air, Drew, if you want, let's just go ahead. This is now 8 of 18 precincts.
Okay.
And then let's just go ahead and look at the levies and see if we see a change. And then we can let – so I'm going to jump these. And
we'll give Joe an opportunity
to catch up.
To catch up with those things. So the new numbers with 8 of 18 precincts coming in. Of course, one of the local races, just that local race we wanted to mention and highlight the numbers continuing to look very strong, obviously, for the Republican candidate and the incumbent, Erica Moore. Right now with 8 of 18 precincts in, she is carrying 79% of the vote, 2,689 in Roane County, by the way. Democratic challenger Juliana Penfold with 697 votes here with 8 of 18 precincts reporting.
And Drew, that's almost 50% of the precincts at this point. So those are very, very strong numbers for Erica Moore, and she is well on her way to winning her election and becoming the first woman to be elected to the House of Delegates of Roane County.
Okay, so let's look at these levies. And once again, the emergency services, the patch, and the senior citizens levy must garner 60+%, and it could be 60.1, but they must garner that 60-point threshold. With 8 of 18 precincts in, Josh, you've got some updates for us.
That's right. So this is the emergency service levy for 2,163 against 1,209. That is 64.15%. So it has went up 2%.
Yes.
So if you're for that levy, that is a good sign at the moment. The patch levy, 2,115 for, 1,252 against. The patch levy at the moment is passing 62.82%. So that's about a little over a 1% increase from the prior. So it is still very, very close. Senior nutrition, we have 2,571 for, 809 against. It's carrying 76%. It was at 75, so it's increased, doing very well. This Board of Education levy, though, this was the outlier, and it continues to be the outlier. With these new coming, like I said, this is 8 of 18 precincts in at the moment, is what we've been told. 1,459 for, 1,866 against. So the Board of Education levy is only carrying about 40, right under 44% before. So
a slight uptick, but again, less than a point of an uptick right now.
Point. So we're starting to see some consistencies.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a. So what that tells me, these are some closer precincts. These would be the precincts probably closer to Spencer. That levy didn't do well. So what we're going to have to look as it gets later and more precincts come in, are those numbers going to improve for that levy or make any significant change for the other levies?
Well, we will check on all of that for you guys. Again, numbers are coming in locally. We'll keep our eyes on the locals and the state government elections, and we'll, of course, continue to highlight while we're live on our streams the national elections and the information that we have for you updated. Stay with us on the radio, folks. We're going to check in probably relatively quickly because our numbers are going to keep coming in here. There may be a slight delay once we start to get those parts of the southern county that come in a little bit later, but right now, those are the numbers that we have for you guys live. Again, if you have any questions about any of these races at this point, if you missed the information, go ahead and shoot us a message on the comment section with any race that you want to see, any levy information, and we'll get that information to you guys as quickly as possible. Until then, we're going to break away from the radio side of things. We'll check in once again at the bottom half of the 8 o'clock hour. We're continuing live here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and TikTok with our coverage of the 2024 general election.
Hey, guys, we forgot to discuss the state amendment.
We did forget to discuss the state amendment.
It was so confusing.
Yeah.
Already.
We just want, yeah. Okay, so I'm pulling up the numbers now.
Is this statewide or is this local here?
Well, this is local here.
Okay, well, that's why you're doing that. We'll pull up the
state
Metro
totals.
News and see if we can see how it's doing.
Okay, so right here. Okay, so Amendment 1, the protection of persons against medically assisted self-harm, because we can't say the actual word. Guys, this is a tight one. 51% against, 49% for. So this is a tight race on the amendment. So what are you guys seeing across the state?
Right now across the state, this is with about 106,000 votes in. The against the levy, 53% to 47. So that's a spread of about 6,000 votes. So a little early to call. That's really close. But as we talked earlier, that was a confusing amendment for a lot. I've heard a lot of people, they didn't understand the amendment, and even if they understood the amendment, they didn't know what was the way to vote to get their point across. So that was an interesting thing, and we'll have to see how that comes in across the state. Presidential elections, if you're of course, I know everybody's watching that. Georgia's getting interesting. We're to the point now where Georgia, I think we have 50% of the vote in.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump has a 11-point lead in the state of Georgia at the moment, which his campaign would have to be happy with. And the other thing that's interesting about that, when you start looking at individual counties, you look at Fulton County. You start looking at Atlanta and so forth. You have 71% of the vote in.
Okay.
In Fulton County. Cobb County is another big county. Right. This is the suburbs of Atlanta. 57% of the in. DeKalb County is still very low, and she's going to do well there. Gwinnett County is another county she'll probably do well. So it's interesting how things are trending there. And then if you look in North Carolina right now, we'll pull that up if people at home don't have that in front of them. Early on, Kamala Harris was way up in North Carolina, but it was more the rural area, the urban area of voting. Yeah. That's tightened way up.
Yeah, it is.
We're down to a 27,000 vote spread with an estimated 5.1 million votes still.
Yeah. Okay, it just updated, so now we're up to 13% expected votes in.
Yeah, and it has got even closer now. So that's one of those things that, again, you wonder those rural counties that were affected by the storms and the damage, how their system is going to take place as far as getting numbers in. One thing we didn't mention, by the way, while we were going through all the hubbub of the local, the NBC News site did call South Carolina for Donald Trump. So right now the lead for him, according to NBC News, of course, is 99 electoral votes to 27. And again, that's is nothing that was unexpected. All these numbers that you're looking at were expected. The blue states are the blue states. The red states right now are the red states. Nothing has changed. No flipping. And so that's where we're at right now with that. Again, the local elections that we're looking at, it looks, for all intents and purposes, as if Erica Moore is doing very, very well, and she will probably be the first ever female the House of Delegates member representing Roane and Wirt counties. Again, the levies we were questioning, Josh. The question was, would they all be the same? Would there be an outlier? And what we're seeing right now is, generally speaking, the first three levies that needed that 60% threshold have done well with it. They've gotten above that threshold. Of course, the senior citizens levy, as you mentioned, is always the one that seems to be the easiest. And we thought, would it be just across the board, or would there be that outlier? And right now, the school system struggling with numbers. Again, there are still 10 precincts out, but the early numbers, the precincts are local, we would imagine. And then you're going to see the outlier areas coming in here. And the question is, will the people in those outlying areas support this levy, or will this thing – and it could be close. I mean, it could come down.
Well, and it's going to have to be a dramatic change.
Yeah.
Because we're not – it's 6%. So
yeah.
There's a lot of votes to switch 6%. And frankly, you're starting to run out. I mean, when you start talking about close to 50% of the votes in, you're starting to run out of votes.
Yeah.
And that's one reason we probably feel so confident. Erica Moore, the amount she's carrying, very confident she's going to become the first female elected to be a House of Delegates. So a historic night here in Roane County. But, in statewide elections, flipping back to that, we'll see if we see any other trends.
Finally getting some numbers reported, some precincts actually reporting.
Right. And when you see that happening, Patrick Morrissey now statewide he's up 36,000 votes. He's carrying 60% of the vote. So this was all expected as you started. It's just such a heavy Republican numbers. You got Trump at the top of the ballot. J.B. McCuskey's up 45,000 votes. Chris Warner, J.B. running for Attorney General. Chris Warner's up 49,000 votes for Secretary of State. Mark Hunt is up 39,000 votes. It's a little bit closer race, or less people voting in that race. And then Kent Leonhardt's up 45,000 votes. So everybody's running similar.
Yeah,
J.B.
right
McCuskey up 45,000 votes. Chris Warner up 49,000 votes. Kent Leonhardt up 45,000 votes. So
right around that 65 to 70%
right.
threshold lead that they've got right now is one of those things that we're looking at.
And Donald Trump right now is winning the state of West Virginia. He's carrying 66%. He's up 52,000 votes, which is why the national news organizations, NBC, all the major ones immediately called.
Two more called, by the way, for Donald Trump, according to NBC. Tennessee and Arkansas both go that way. 105 electoral votes to 27 right now is the lead. But again, none of these these aren't the ones we're looking at. We're looking at a couple of them. And right now, Georgia and Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is that main one that we're looking at. And again, it is so early in those numbers.
And these numbers, we can't get. If you're a Trump person, you can't get over it. You're going to start seeing, well, we're way up in the Electoral College. Well, the moment California closes in their 50-plus electoral votes, it's going to go to Kamala Harris.
Right.
The moment New York closes, so there are very large states that will even that up very quickly, and that's why everybody keeps talking about Georgia.
Everybody calm down?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. That's probably where this election is going to be determined, and maybe not for several hours, and really the fear being several days.
Yeah.
Okay, so Michigan and Wisconsin, they're not even closing until 9 o'clock.
That's correct. And some of the Michigan's in 2 time zones. Florida's in 2 time zones. So you got some states dealing with that.
And
so once again, we want to run through these levies locally. If you didn't hear the information a minute ago,
okay, hold on.
go ahead and pull those up,
Let me
Joe.
pull some pictures, sir. I've been here.
You've worked the numbers so hard here, Joe.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so let's start with the state amendment.
Yeah, the amendment protecting persons against medically assisted self-harm, that right now is 51% against, 49% for. And again, those are Roane County numbers right now, but that is
very similar to what
very
the state's
similar
showing.
across the state.
It's less than a 6,000. Right now, against is up, but only by about 5,500 votes total.
So the emergency services levy, which again 60% plus is the threshold at the moment. 8 of 18 precincts are in, and it is 2,163 votes for, 1,209 votes against, 64 to 35% at the moment. It is passing, but again, we've got a lot still to be determined. The patch services levy right now is passing. 2,115 votes for, 1,252 votes against, 62, almost 63% for to 37% against. And again, those are 60% thresholds. The senior nutrition levy knocking it out of the park right now, as Josh said. 2,571 votes for, only 809 votes against. It is passing right now, 76%. But the big one, we wondered if they would just be all together or one would be a one-off. And right now, the Board of Education levy struggling. They need 50.1% with 1,459 votes for, 1,866 votes against. Right now, it's got some work to do and not a lot of time to do it.
It's almost got to flip what it's done.
Yeah.
I mean, and the question being, some of those more rural. We're talking rural in Roane County, but outside Spencer are the votes there. Now, there are a couple big precincts outside Spencer. Some of the Walton precincts are large precincts.
Walton alone's there's a lot of ground
there.
there.
The numbers are there, but it would have to be a dramatic turn here at the end.
By the way, we did have another state called this time. Delaware called for Kamala Harris with 3 electoral votes. So the total, again, that's NBC News calling that. That's not us. Don't yell at us. So right now, 105 to 30, Donald Trump over Kamala Harris. And again, that does not include those big states that are going to be coming in. And it's going to get wild. It'll get crazy. But the numbers we're continuing to watch, again, Pennsylvania and Georgia. And so those are some very interesting things that are going through.
Because here's what we got to talk about. Sorry to interrupt. North Carolina, this is what we're talking about. So there have been 809,000 votes cast. 810,000 votes cast.
Showing 820.
Or whatever. There are some others. Kamala Harris, 405,148. Donald Trump, 404,500. She is right now carrying 49.4. Donald Trump, 49.3.
Just chaos.
So that's the numbers that we are looking at, with an estimated 4.9 million votes to go.
And it's with it being that tight, literally one precinct in Charlotte or Raleigh could flip that
Absolutely,
like that.
Yeah.
absolutely. So, we got to start looking. So if we look at that map, let's go and look at for example, where Raleigh's at, Wake County. There's only 6% of the vote in.
Yeah.
So there are still big numbers there. And now Macon, some of those western counties, Trump's doing well in. Becombe, probably that's Asheville.
Okay.
Kamala Harris is doing very well there. So yeah, it's gonna be a long night in North Carolina.
Yeah, going to be very, very interesting to see those numbers. And again, we've got 8 of the 18 precincts in for Roane County.
And did you guys see the number on the voter turnout so far?
I did not pay attention. What do you have, Joe?
39.92% voter turnout in Roane County.
But I think that's so far.
Yeah, that's out of 8 of 18.
That can go up.
Yes.
Yeah,
because the first report we got, it was at 31.74%, and now we're at 39.92% of voter turnout in Roane County.
Let's keep it rolling.
10 more precincts to go.
Yeah,
so
let's keep it rolling.
That number's going to keep going up, so that's great. That's what we like to see.
Statewide race numbers, again, for Governor Patrick Morrisey continuing to open up his lead. He is now garnering 61% of the vote to 33% for Steve Williams. Morrisey leading by 57,000 plus votes at the moment. So looks as if the early prediction from NBC News is going to come through. And, of course, the state races as well looking very, very similar. All of these races, the Republican candidate right now leading by 65 to 70%. J.B. McCuskey leading 68% to 32 over Teresa Torseva. Chris Warner leading 69% of the vote to Thornton Cooper's 31%. Mark Hunt, 67% of the vote to Marianne Clater's 33%. Of course, Larry Pack unopposed, and 68% for Ken Leonhardt, and just 32% for Deborah Stiles. So those numbers, fellas, are very similar to a lot of different numbers with regards to the top of the ticket.
Absolutely, and that's why if you go to Metro News' website, they have called Jim Justice, they have called Patrick Morrisey's race, so they're going to start calling these races very quickly.
And it's funny to say that Mark Hunt is the closest race out of all those, and he's pulling 67% of the vote.
Yeah. By the way, those numbers for Jim Justice right now, 67% to 30% over Glenn Elliott. He's leading by 75,000 plus votes in the Senate race. So, again, that is looking good for Jim Justice.
The constitutional ballot race for the protection of persons against medically self-harm.
Thank
I've got
you, Josh.
that right now.
Joe is quick to jump in and make sure we don't.
You guys are making me nervous.
I do not want to click off. I do not want to get knocked off of TikTok or Facebook.
The 51% against, so 88,034, 84,849, 4. So that's a spread of 3,100 votes and a statewide race out of 172,000 votes. It's 3,100 votes. So goes to show that we may have thought here in West Virginia not a lot of contested races, not important to go vote. Well, that shows you some importance.
Yeah.
If that's an issue that's important to you, it's going to come down to a couple hundred votes.
Guys, a couple of the races we didn't talk about was U.S. House of Representatives races. The incumbent Carol Miller right now leading heavily. Again, very similar to the other races, 70% of the vote to Chris Bob Reed with 23%, 30,000 plus vote lead. On the other side, 2nd Congressional District right now, Riley Moore, the Republican, leading Steve Wendelin, the Democrat, 67% to 33%. Again, 43 plus thousand votes. That is, again, 135 of 759 precincts. So there's a lot still to be determined. And again, some of these we're going to be good with, but many of these things we're just going to be off the air before that happens.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, once again, in the statewide races here in West Virginia, you're seeing all the Republican candidates carrying 65 to 70%. So they are running consistent. They are running consistent with what Donald Trump's doing in the state of West Virginia. So really not a lot of surprises here in the state. The one thing that could get interesting is, the Republican party doesn't have much room to increase its majority. I mean, it's just not there. So you look through and you start looking through all. We're not going to go through all these statewide, state senate and state house races, but sometimes it's interesting to flip through and see if there was an incumbent upset here or there, or if there's been a switch in parties. But just flipping through it quickly, many of the incumbents are unopposed, and the Republicans appear to be winning the majority of the races. So one Democrat's doing well in Monongalia County right now, Joey Garcia. He's up about 2,700 votes. That's Morgantown. If you go to any WVU games, you might see some of his signs and so forth. And that is one of the last. I read an article that there are geysers in the state of West Virginia. There's a red wave, but there's a couple geysers coming up out of the ground. And Charleston might be one. Morgantown would be another. So county by county votes. That's one thing we talked about. Steve, Patrick Morrissey, they have declared him to have won, but it would be interesting to go to the governor's race.
Oh, I see papers coming.
Oh, yeah.
And while you guys do that, it'd be interesting to see how he did in Cabell County, which we'll look at later. But let's pass these out.
So what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to go radio silent for just a second. Before we do that, I just wanted to say we were looking at that North Carolina poll in the national presidential race. Now, with 21% of the votes in, Donald Trump is leading in North Carolina, 52% to 46%. Very, very close, very early still, though, in that race. So we're going to break away while Joe McDonald starts to hammer out some more of these. We've got 13 of the 18 precincts in here for the local races. Give us just a few seconds for Joe to input the information. We'll go live on the radio, and we'll get you the updated levy results and the local race action here on WVRC. Well, thank you once again very much, George. We are down here at the courthouse in Roane County, and we have been following, obviously, the statewide and the national results. We have been waiting patiently for results to start coming in as far as it concerns any of the local stuff that we have. And again, we only have one local race that is a challenged race. That is District 15 for the House of Delegates between the incumbent Erica Moore and the challenger, the Democrat Juliana Penfold. We've been watching that. That has been a very good start and a very good outpouring as far as we know so far for Erica Moore. The things that we've been watching the most and been working on the most are these levies that need to hit 60% plus for the three of the ones, the emergency services levy, the patch levy, and of course the senior services levy, and then the 50+% that needs to be done for the Board of Education excess levy. Those are the things that we have been looking at, fellas, and we now have some new results. 13 of the 18 precincts have been put in. And before we talk about the numbers and the levies, let's talk about the participation here, guys, the turnout so far in Roane County as far as vote totals is concerned.
Well, Drew, it's interesting how these come in. The voter turnout goes up each time a new precinct comes in, because out of 13 precincts already, 49% of the registered voters have voted.
Yeah.
So we're going to be well over 50%. That's
Yes.
great. Like I said, we talked earlier, we want 99. We want 100%.
Would love it.
But
As long as we don't hit over 100, we're okay.
Yeah, that would be a whole different issue to hit over 100, and we're not even laughing about that. Secretary of State's office is watching us probably right now.
Yeah.
But that was the old historical days in West Virginia and certain counties. But we'll leave it at that. But we're going to hit. I would predict 60%.
Really?
I think so. We have 5 more precincts to come in. It's going to clearly be over 50. So
right.
We'll see if we can get close to 60.
And that is an interesting point to talk, because we talked about earlier, Josh, that there was such a huge turnout for early voting that we all thought nobody will show up on election day because everybody's already voted. And based on the numbers previously, that would have been the case,
Right.
but
Well,
not this year.
A little over 2,200 people early voted.
Yeah.
And with 5 precincts to go, the total votes 4,400. So we're right there. 25% of the voters voted early voting. We're now basically at 50% at 49.85. So it's great. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And again, still 5 more precincts to go. 13 of the 18 reported. Right now, you look at the screen if you're watching us on our YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch streams. The first race that we're looking at is that House of Delegates race between the Republican incumbent Erica Moore and the Democratic challenger in Juliana Penfold. And, Josh, you're getting dangerously close to calling this one right now due to just the massive lead right now for Erica Moore.
Well, and I think we can, and it's because if you look, Erica Moore is up approximately 2,500 votes. There's not 2,500 votes left in those precincts. So she's carrying 80% of the vote. That is a tremendous win for Erica Moore.
And again, we don't have Work County numbers. We did have early voting numbers, though, and it was very similar numbers. She was leading 700 to 100, something like that.
So I think we can call that race. You may see a shift in a couple percentages, but there's just not enough votes left out there. But congratulations to both of those ladies for running.
Wonderful, yeah.
Congratulations to Erica Moore for.
As I've always said, if you put your name into the hat and you run for a public office, kudos to you. I would not do it.
Absolutely,
it's a gutsy move regardless.
Yes.
Absolutely. So congratulations to Juliana Penfold too. Those ladies just campaigned. You read the article in the paper. They just stated what they believed in. No mudslinging, nothing ugly. So congratulations.
Very, very clean race.
Absolutely.
Some places could learn from that.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to the levy results that we have so far. And again, Josh, as you're talking about, I don't even like that one. I don't care about that one anymore. I'm done with that self-harm.
The state amendment.
Yeah, it's against.
I was going to say, you guys make me panic when you talk about it anyway.
I was just going to pass it up there.
It's the most interesting race in the state right now.
Yeah.
We'll move on from it because out of 170 272,000 votes. It's a separation of about 537, but we won't talk about it.
Yeah. We'll get onto that here in a little bit. So the levies that we're looking at, and again, these are the ones we've been looking at heavily. And again, the emergency services, the patch, and the senior citizens levy must carry 60+% of the votes in order to pass. The Roane County Board of Education excess levy must carry 50.1% of the votes to pass. So, Josh, we've got some new numbers with 13 of 18 precincts.
That's right. So the emergency service levy first, 2,659 for, 1,546 against. It is passing right now with 63.23% of the vote. So that's a slight increase. 5 precincts to go, but those numbers have been staying very similar.
Very steady.
The one that's going to look like it's going to come down to the end tonight is this patch levy at the moment.
And in the past, patch has usually stayed around the 60-61%. So it's passed, and it's always passed, but it's always just been just by the skin of their teeth. So that one's going to be interesting.
And that's where we're at the moment. 2,604 votes for, 1,601 against. It is passing at the moment at 61.93%. So very, very close.
Now, my chart showing 62. That's in whole numbers. Josh and Drew have the actual breakdown.
Joe, you didn't carry like 3 decimal points out?
No, I didn't. I'm not that smart.
I don't know how we're ever going to be picked up nationally to fix this.
I'm sorry. Hey, I got 2 years to fix it. How about that?
The debriefing meeting. A senior nutrition levy now. Everybody's voting for, not everybody. It's doing very, very well. 3,167 for, 1,057 against. It's passing by 74.98, 75% if you look at Joe's.
Yeah.
and that's the only one that has held steady all night long.
Absolutely, and traditionally has done very well. So now in all 3 of those levies we just went over, you have to pass it by 60% at least.
Yeah, because if it passes at 58 or 59, it did not win.
Right.
It passed, but it did not win.
Board of Education. This is the one that's the 50%. This is the outlier tonight. Again, for 1,806 against 2,348. That's only 43.48% for, and that is what it's been running all night. I think it's been 44 to 43% all night. It is not, like I said, we've only got 5 precincts left. It's not looking good for
the 500 below where it would need to be, 500 and then some change. Are there 500 yes votes left out there?
You'd have to see which precincts are there. There are, like I said, there are a couple large precincts, but it's a good question, Drew. But, I mean, for it to pass, it's going to have to win these last. If there are 500 votes left, it's going to have to pass 95% in those precincts. So it's not looking good.
Yes, and based on the passage, just the general areas. Again, we don't know what areas are reporting. You're talking Walton, Harper Church area, Newton, Amma, that the whole basically lower end of the county. Can they pull 500 votes, not counting all the counter votes?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Areas.
It's going to have to. It's only been carrying about 43% of the vote for.
Yeah.
So it would, if there are enough votes there, it would have to win those precincts by 9, and it's not going to happen. I mean, if you just look at the numbers, I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, we'll continue to watch that and see what happens with the final 5 precincts as they are going to be coming in. But everything else has relatively remained the same as far as that's concerned. Josh can kind of unofficially call Erica Moore the incumbent House of Delegates for District 15. Again, as you said, history being made here no matter what it was going to be. But Erica Moore, the first ever representative elected
female
to this.
That's right, because she was appointed to finish Riley Keaton's term. So this is her. Of course, she won the primary, but this is the first general election that a female will be elected by Roane County. So congratulations for that historic night. And if you look at all of these other races, Donald Trump and Jim Justice, I think, are pretty good buddies.
I think I've seen a picture or two of them floating around.
So right now, Donald Trump is carrying 74.25% of the vote in that race.
In Roane County.
Jim Justice is carrying 74.25%. And Baby Dog's probably helping. There.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So when are we gonna see the book Baby Dog Goes to Washington?
that's got to be coming soon, right? I mean, it's the most lovable dog in the world. All the other races statewide, we'll wait till the final results are coming in. But all the Republicans in Roane County, and if you look on Metro News, are carrying anywhere from 65 to 75%, running very close.
Yeah,
with
right.
Donald Trump.
Yeah, between the state races, Patrick Morrissey is pulling the closest, and he's sitting at 65%.
And then
in Roane County.
Now the closest statewide race, and it has just flipped.
Really?
It's the protection of persons against medically
assisted self-harm.
Thank you, Joe.
You guys make me. Can we just say Amendment 1?
Okay,
Yes.
we'll call Amendment 1 from
Okay.
here on out.
Thank you.
Until we're ready to shut down tonight, then we're
Yep.
just going to really shut her down. The for 152,356 against 147,174. That's a 51 to 49 split. That's a 2%. And in Roane County,
It's flipped. We are at 51 against and 49 for.
It's flipped. So that'll be interesting to see a county by county
breakdown
when it's that close.
Yeah.
That close. So.
Well, those are the local race results that we have. Again, they're up to date, folks. And once again, if you missed any of those while we're here on the radio, don't forget you can tune into our live stream and just go to the comment section on whatever you're watching. Send us a question if you want to know the results of any race, any levy, anything. We have them here, and we've got them in real time for you guys. Again, 13 of the 18 precincts finalized here in Roane County. We've got 5 more to go. We're going to break away from the radio station. We'll come back on the radio at the top half of the 9 o'clock hour. We'll get those last final 5 precincts in. Until then, going to send it back up to the studio. All right. I do appreciate everyone continuing to tune in with us.
You know, Drew, this is a dominating night statewide for the Republican Party.
Yeah.
It's a trend, and I think something that might represent that more than anything, the governor's race. You know, Steve Williams has been the longtime mayor of Huntington in Cabell County, but if you look at the statewide races, Patrick Morrissey is winning Cabell County.
Wow.
So that just gives you an example of the dominance. And the interesting thing, looking at this from politics, you know, how long can the Republican Party
This trend go along?
keep this trend? And if you are the Democrat Party statewide, what do you do? I mean, you got to start finding races here and there, or find the candidate that can win a statewide race. And it's the same position Republicans were in 40 years ago. So it's really interesting how that happens. And some of that's probably attributed to some national politics a little bit.
Some of the things we haven't talked about here at all tonight, our neighbors to the east, by the way, in Calhoun County, one of our main service areas for WVRC, they have a lot of hotly contested races going on over there. They've got county commission races going on over there. They've got prosecutors races going on over there. So they have, by the way, a Board of Education levy on their docket as well, similar to the one that Roane County has here that is having trouble with. It'll be interesting to see how those numbers shake out throughout the night as well.
Right, and I reached out to someone I know in Calhoun County trying to ask, did we have any results yet? And I think traditionally Calhoun releases theirs all together.
Yeah, they do right at the end.
They have less precincts, so that could be coming in before we know it too. And I know there's a lot of interest there. Looking at the national election, you know, Georgia is getting closer. Donald Trump is up. He's carrying 52.8% of the vote. He's up about 200,000 votes. 66% of the votes are in Georgia, so we're getting closer there. Pennsylvania, Kamala Harris is still doing very well, but there's 16% of the vote in the presidential vote. And if you look down, it's really interesting. And Drew, I talked about this. Kamala Harris for president, 64.2%. Bob Casey, who's the incumbent Democrat running for the U.S. Senate, 63.7%. So that's why we said we want to look at those races and how important they could be. And then let's flip over to North Carolina.
While you're looking at that number, by the way, many states called again here in this one. So most recently, Donald Trump, and again, none of this is shocking to anybody. Donald Trump, they have called, NBC News has called North and South Dakota both, and Wyoming for Donald Trump. Oklahoma and Texas also have officially been called for Donald Trump. So he's up to 154. And again, none of those are outlier numbers. Those are all to be expected. And again, we're waiting for some numbers to come in as soon as some of these other big states come in for Kamala Harris. Those will bump her numbers up. This is how we see it go most often. The question is going to be the big what we call those swing states in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Georgia. You know, those are going to be the interesting ones.
And right now, the big seven, Arizona.
Yeah.
Excuse me, 6 of the big 7. Nevada is the other one. But Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia all closed.
Yeah. Arizona and New Mexico closed. All those polls closed. So we are looking at some very interesting numbers. Georgia right now, while you're looking at North Carolina in a second, Georgia looking strong still with 67% of the votes in, looking good for Donald Trump, 52.9% to 46.5%, 1.9 million votes to 1.67 million votes right now. And again, you were looking at some of the county by county results in that, but let's go to the North Carolina county by county results that you're looking at here, Joe.
Right. So Donald Trump he's carrying about 52% of the vote. There's 41% in the state of North Carolina. And here's what's interesting too. This is going to be very close. Well, there's an independent running. His name's Chase Oliver.
Yeah.
And he's got 10,000 votes.
It's crazy.
And I guarantee you, either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump would like to have those 10,000 votes.
I would absolutely believe it.
So, I mean, it's a half. He's almost carrying a half a percentage.
Hey, Jill Stein with 8,900 votes. Cornel West with 3,800. You add those things up, both those candidates would be like, man, would love to have those.
Exactly. So if you look at all those other candidates, Cornel West, Jill Stein, and Chase Oliver, we're looking at about 22,000 votes. That could be the difference. And Jill Stein is a lot of people in the Democrat Party and Hillary Clinton's race were very upset with her, thinking she made a difference in Wisconsin and Michigan back in 2016. So,
wow.
And she's pulled. So of those, Chase Oliver, Jill Stein, and Cornel West in North Carolina, they're carrying 1%.
Yeah.
Well, the polls are showing 1%.
Yeah.
So there's your 1%.
There's your 1%. So it's a very interesting thing to look at, and flip down to Georgia and do the same thing, and see who all is on the ballot in Georgia. Chase Oliver's on the ballot there. He's got 12,000 votes in Georgia. Very similar. Jill Stein, she has another. So there's 21,000 votes that have went to other candidates that I guarantee you both campaigns would have
love
won.
to have.
So when it's this,
But with the Georgia one, Trump's up by almost 300,000 votes. So luckily in the Trump camp, that's not really hurting as bad as it is in North Carolina.
right, exactly. So it's a interesting thing, and going through and seeing if they put any results. Let's flip to Michigan.
Just a real quick question here that I had. Somebody messaged in, said Andrea Hayes wanted to know the status of the Roane County school levy, please. She missed that. Right now, with just 5 precincts left, Andrea, right now for the levy is 43.48%, against the levy 56.52%. It's a separation of about 500 votes plus, so a long road to hoe for that school board levy that needs to hit 50+%. But again, still 5 precincts left, but that's where we have that one. Just had that one quick question, needed to get that one out.
And I don't know what state you're looking at
Michigan.
there. Michigan. So here's one, and we hit on this earlier. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He tried to drop out of the race. He's endorsed Donald Trump, but he's still on the ballot, and he's carrying right now a half a percentage point.
Yep.
So does RFK Jr., end up hurting. He could potentially cost the candidate he's endorsed the election, potentially.
Yeah.
That's how close this could be.
Yeah, because you're talking. Okay, just updated.
By the way, he is on the ballot in Wisconsin, in Iowa as well. So those are some of those states. He's on the ballot in Kansas. He's on the ballot in Colorado. So those are states that he could not get himself off the ballots.
And he tried. There were long. I mean, the only people who might be sleeping well tonight may be the attorneys.
Nah, I think they're like trying to figure out where to put all that extra money.
Is that what it is? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in Michigan, Trump's only behind by 43,000 votes, so it's tight.
Well, yeah. So that's a 0% reporting. So yeah,
Right.
these are the states that closed at 9 o'clock. So it could get really interesting if you follow this. I don't know. We probably won't be on the air by then. But by 10 o'clock, it's going to start getting real interesting.
Very crazy.
Because you're going to get states like Georgia who are going to start hitting that 85, 90% votes in. North Carolina, you might be able to pick up on a trend more of Pennsylvania. So it's going to get really tight.
Very, very tight. It's going to be a little bit wild here. So those are some of the national situations we're looking at. And, again, the statewide races really just mirroring the West Virginia vote for the top of the ticket. Right now, with less than half, about a third of the precincts reporting, Patrick Morrissey running away with the governor's race, 105,000 vote lead. He's at 61% to 33% for Steve Williams. And if I could pull up this, come on. Sometimes you love technology and Wi-Fi. Sometimes, which is more often than not, I can't stand it. I'm working off my little tiny Wi-Fi up there in the far corner. So, again, in the statewide races, Attorney General J.B. McCuskey, 69% of the vote to 31%, leading by over 138,000 votes. Secretary of State Chris Warner at 70% to 30% for Thornton Cooper. The auditor's race, 70% for Mark Hunt to Mary Ann Claters, 30%. And Kent Leonard almost up to 70%. Now he's at 69% over Deborah Stiles. So those are all still right at that 70% area.
I mean, look at J.B. McCuskey's up 138,329 votes. Mark Hunt is up 138,300 votes. So they're within 29 votes. I mean, It shows you that the voter in West Virginia, at least in these statewide elections, is voting the same.
Yeah.
It's very, very consistent going down. And it'll be interesting to see when you look in a few days, the Republican turnout versus the Democrat turnout. Is this straight? It's obviously not. You have independents are going Republican in West Virginia is what you have.
Yes.
And probably what some of that is, if you look in big picture, a lot of those, I guess, non-registered,
No party
affiliation,
Yeah.
not independent. That is probably some of your traditional, your blue dog, that's your Joe Manchin Democrat who.
What they classify as the old school Democrat.
And that is probably a Democrat in West Virginia who feels that his and her national party have left them. That would be my guess if you look at that.
Right. Well, and basing it in Roane County alone, it used to be Democrat and Republican used to fight over slots 1 and 2. Now, Democrats taking the third seat population or number-wise as being the third highest popular party in Roane County alone. Republican is almost 2-1 in the lead. No party has exceeded Democrats.
Hey, I'm looking for that Jedi party to get some numbers up. By the way, one more update to the presidential race. According to NBC News, Mississippi called for Donald Trump. Again, none of these, are shocking results at the moment. We're looking for a couple of results that may end up be shocking, maybe before we go off the air, but we don't know for sure. But right now you're looking at 160 electoral votes for Donald Trump, 30 for Kamala Harris. And, of course, lots of big numbers still out there. 9 o'clock, some of these very interesting swing state polls closed. We're still looking at Pennsylvania. We're still looking at Georgia, though.
And we're trying. I have a source. The Calhoun County votes are in.
Okay.
I'm trying to see if we can at least get some unofficial results in, but they are.
That would be nice to have if we could.
Yeah, I'm trying to reach out and see if they can send me a email or a text.
Again, what we're waiting on, folks, is 5 more precincts. We don't know which ones are still out there, but again, we have results in for 13 of the 18 precincts, and so far, I think Josh Downey is channeled his inner Steve Kornacki. He has called, I believe, the race for the 15th District House of Delegates for Erica Moore, and so again, history made, the first female elected delegate for District 15. Of course, that is Roane County and Work County. We don't have the Work County
part
result.
of Work County.
Part of Work County. We just had an early vote number there. Early vote number. That was
Now hold on, sir. How early we talking?
that was mirroring the results here in Roane County. Right now, the big things that we're looking at are the levies. The emergency services levy right now, slightly comfortable, you would say, with 63% of the vote for, 36% of the vote against. And again, it's a 60+% threshold for that. The patch levy is the one that is really nose above water right now, 61.9% for the levy, 38% against the levy. The senior nutrition levy is going to pass. Let's just say that. It is wide open there, 75% for.
That has been a solid foundation all night.
Yeah. And then the one that a lot of people have been keeping their eye on, the question was, would the voters in Roane County and the taxpayers in Roane County just go across the board for all these levies, or would there be an outlier with this Board of Education excess levy? Right now it is an outlier because it has been stuck at about 43 to 44% with just 5 precincts remaining, a margin of over 500 votes to make up. And again, that was only a 50% plus margin that needed to be hit, and it does not look good at the moment for that one.
I've got some results from Calhoun I can report.
Fantastic.
So this is off photographs, and I'll do my best and to see if I can. I'm just going to go through the contested races right now. So they had 2 county commissioner races that were contested. One was for an unexpired term. Roger Props was appointed to that. He was running against the Democrat Jacob McCumbers. Jacob McCumbers wins that race, and that's for a 2-year term. Roger Props 1,327 to Jacob McCumbers 1,459.
Boy, so close.
So close. My understanding, the other county commission races, now this is a 6-year term. Eric Lapardis beats the Republican, beats the incumbent Democrat Kevin Helmick. Eric Lapardis 1,673, Kevin Helmick 1,160. So that was an 18% spread, so that was a pretty comfortable.
Lapardis, the newcomer to politics, and Helmick, as you mentioned, the incumbent, so a bit of a surprise there maybe for Calhoun County.
Prosecuting attorney, Republican Michael Hicks is the incumbent, but Democrat Shannon Johnson, who was a former prosecutor in Calhoun County, came back and run. Michael Hicks wins that election 1,766 to Shannon Johnson's 1,093. Michael Hicks carries about 62% of the vote.
Okay.
And then we can talk close. They had a Board of Education levy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, was their levy still at the 60% as well?
I don't know.
It should be 50, I believe.
Okay.
Board of Education levy.
Okay.
You ready? For the Board of Education levy in Calhoun County, 1,356. Against, 1,361.
Oh, my gosh.
It lost by 5 votes.
Holy
So
cow.
the final percentage vote was 49.914, 50.09 against.
Let's just say I assume that there will be a count there in canvassing.
That's about as – and they had so Calhoun County had – I don't see – these are good numbers, I think, for Calhoun County in these races. You see for the one county commissioner race, the prosecutor's race, there was almost 2,900 votes in that race. So they had good turnout, too, it seems like.
And that levy with it being that close, there could be some late absentee. And when I say late, before anybody panics, late as in they were mailed out on time, but they may not receive the county clerk's office until Thursday or Friday.
That is why canvassing is so important here.
So
I think my source is listening. Calhoun County had 66% turnout.
holy cow. So we have the late absentees that could possibly flip that, and there may be a couple provisionals that get passed through as well. So, I mean, that.
Yeah, 5 votes out of, 2,800. It's not unheard of, but, hey, your vote counts.
Yeah.
I mean,
Now, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong. One of the candidates that did win was a Democrat.
Yes. That
I
was
wonder how.
Jacob McCumber's winning in that county commission race.
Which is, to me personally, that's shocking considering all the numbers we're seeing.
Exactly.
Is if you're a Republican, you basically automatically win.
Traditionally, Calhoun was one of the last counties to flip. They've had a very active Republican Party here the past couple years. But yeah, that's a Democrat winning a race. So that's an interesting number when you compare it to everything else. So congratulations to those folks in Calhoun County who won.
And thanks to your source, by the way, too.
And once again, just as here in Roane County, because, WVRC, we love our sister county Calhoun,
100%.
too. It takes a lot to put yourself out there. It absolutely does. And it takes a lot of time, takes money, takes effort. And, congratulations for just running.
Exactly.
That goes to everybody.
And the numbers show that a lot of people have this stigma, my vote doesn't matter. My vote doesn't count.
It certainly did in that one.
Yeah. We're talking 5 votes on a levy in Calhoun County. You tell me that your vote does not count out of 5 votes.
Exactly.
So I had a question. Paul King said, what about the EMS and fire levy? Right now, the EMS and fire services levy is passing at 63+%, but again, still 5 precincts are out. That's what we're waiting for, is those final 5 precincts to come in. Once we get all that information, we can comfortably talk about all of the final results in that. Of course, the one race that we have as far as House of Delegates, District 15, Josh Downey has called that for Erica Moore over Juliana Penfold. Again, history made, the first ever female elected to that position for Roane County and parts of Wirt County. We did have a couple of updates in the presidential election. A couple of states called, one for either side. Louisiana called for Donald Trump with 8 votes, and then one more called, and that was Maryland for Kamala Harris. So she's got 34 now unofficially in the national race for president. That's according to, again, as you look at their NBC News. I had somebody message, Terry LaRue said, Mineral County Commissioner results. Well, Terry, this is a Roane County and Calhoun County based thing. I don't know if Josh Downey has any Mineral County connections.
Let me see what I can do.
Let's see what you
Josh is making phone calls.
He's going to look up Metro News and see if we could find that.
I don't think they're doing
local.
I don't see local. So
Sorry about that, Terry.
Does some of the local news affiliates, would they have any?
They might. That's what I would do. I would go up to the, this presidential race. It's getting really – so Georgia. We have 71% in.
Hold on, sir. Let me pull up Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay. Got you, brother.
This is what you got to start looking at. Now, this is where you got to get – so Donald Trump's up about 250,000 votes.
Oh, my gosh.
So he's carrying 52%. Well, then you got to go to your map.
Yeah.
So you see this big red map, and you look at all it, but look at up in the northern part of most of those votes are in 95%. These are counties that Donald Trump is winning by 80%.
Yeah.
Walker County, he's won. He's carrying 80% of the vote. 95% of the votes in. So there's no vote, but there's only been 31,000 votes cast in that county. And you scroll across, those are very rural counties. And he's carrying Lumpkin County. Donald Trump carries 80%. White County, 79.2. Union County, 81%.
Yeah.
But there's only 20,000 voters in these counties. Now you go back to this blue patch. Fulton County, DeKalb County. This is Atlanta. This is Metro Atlanta.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris is carrying 82% of the vote. there's still 36% out there. So there's only 64% of DeKalb's in, 77. So is there enough votes still coming in from those heavily areas? And then there's a couple other counties floating in there they're not reporting. I'm not familiar enough with them. How big are these counties? And you're not reporting. So that's what you got to start looking at state by state.
Well, and what's bad, Josh, is, if you go above Atlanta, I mean, you can see Franklin County, it's unaccounted for, but you can pretty much see there's a sea of red around it, but you still get around Hancock County and Washington County and Wilkinson, there's still a smatter of red and blue right in just those three counties right there around it, so it's kind of hard to tell on those three counties alone where it could go.
Exact. So it's going to be a tight race. You look at North Carolina, Donald Trump's carrying 50.7% of the vote. He's up 80,000 votes, 52% of the vote in. So close.
So many races, so close here. You just roll up and down the list. Virginia right now with 56% in and 13 electoral votes right now. Donald Trump leading by about 50,000 votes is all. Right now, Pennsylvania 24%. Again, there's a lot to be determined there. Right now, Kamala Harris leading 56.9% to 42%. And again, 24% of those votes in. Lots to be determined there, as is in Ohio right now. Donald Trump leading 54% to 44%. But again, there's still a lot of stuff to go on in the national race for president.
Right, and then in Philadelphia County in Pennsylvania, she is winning right now by 83% of the vote, and there's only 21%. So there's a lot of Kamala Harris votes still in that county. So flipping over to see if Michigan's reported anything yet.
I was checking the gambling site we was looking at earlier. It's funny. It's flipping colors like crazy. Before we started, it was pretty solid. What the numbers were. But man, it's changing colors like Christmas over there.
Yeah. Again, what we're looking for now, folks, in the local races is we are waiting for the final 5 precincts to come in. 13 of the 18 have reported. We're just looking for really final levy results because we have basically called the House of Delegates race for Erica Moore. So we're looking at those levy races. And again,
and the Amendment 1.
That Amendment 1 race. The senior services levy, I'm pretty comfortable saying, is going to pass with flying colors.
I think so, too. I'm not sure. It's just like we've said, there's just not enough votes. It's the same concern we have for if you're supporting the school levy.
Yeah.
Are there enough votes to flip 6%? The answer is probably no.
And then the other two are still within margin of error right now when it comes to the patch levy and the EMS fire levy. Those are both just barely above 60% with 5 still remaining precincts. We are just waiting patiently for those final 5 to come in. And again, we'll get those results as soon as they're finished. They bring them down to us, so no one else will get them faster.
Yeah, I think Cena said that they hand out reports every 5 precincts, so we're waiting on the last precinct to probably come in. And again, we don't know what precincts are coming in, but we're going to assume it's probably someone from the lower end of the county that takes a little while to get here. It is November. There's deer running wild, so we don't want.
Yeah, be careful out there.
Yes.
And here's some national news that just came across. So there were glitches. Well, that's a clerk's nightmare.
Yes.
Okay, as an IT guy, that makes me nervous.
Right. So polling sites in Arizona County with glitches.
Oh, gosh.
Can extend voting hours, judge says. So
I
told you them attorneys were sleeping good. Yeah. Well, they may not sleep tonight. But
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out their rate at this point.
yeah.
Wow.
And then some of these U.S. Senate races, one of them was in Ohio. We talked about that earlier with the Bernie Moreno, Sherrod Brown.
Yeah, we really haven't kept up on those much since the beginning.
Right. Bernie Moreno's up. He's carrying over 50%. He's not doing quite. Donald Trump's carrying 54% of the vote in Ohio right now. Bernie Moreno's at 50.2. So some interesting results. Let's look at that map too and see where votes are left in Ohio. I'm pulling up some individual counties. I'm looking at Franklin County, which is Columbus. 57% of the vote is in, so there's still some votes there. Still a lot of votes in Cuyahoga County, which is Cleveland. Another interesting county that you look at a lot of times in Ohio is Hamilton. That's Cincinnati. That's another blue spot to look at. And the final county is Athens. That's another college area. So interesting how this works out.
Well, one interesting early, and this is, again, extremely early, is in Wisconsin for that Senate race with Eric Hovde, the Republican, ran a really strong campaign right now. Tammy Baldwin, the Democrat incumbent. Hovde leading early, again, just very shallow numbers now, but he's got a couple thousand vote lead early on in that race. That was one of those that people were talking about, I think, as, trying to knock off that incumbent, or would she be able to maintain the position?
And look at the percentages of Donald Trump right now. That's why we're looking at these Senate races. Donald Trump's carrying 51.3% of the vote at the moment. This is with 7% of the votes in Wisconsin.
Very early.
And Hudby is at 51.1, and there's a big blue spot there in Wisconsin.
Speaking of a big blue spot, officially called by NBC News, New York is called for Kamala Harris. So a big bump right now for her, 28 electoral votes. She's now up to 62.
But, Josh, you're talking about all these outlier extra candidates. At Wisconsin, Robert Kennedy has pulled 1,000 votes.
Right.
And we're talking less than 10,000 between Trump and Harris. So right there.
Right. And the number to look at is look at the percentage.
Yeah.
He's carried 0.5%.
Yeah.
Well, if the polls are showing it's a 1% race, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So, and Wisconsin is another one of these counties. If you look at the map, and they're starting to fill in the individual counties, they're all red except two, and one of that being Dane County. Well, that's Madison, and if you're a sports fan, if you're a college sports fan, that's the University of Wisconsin. So another example of a certain area being strong for Democrats, and we have some.
We have 18 of 18.
And I just want to say, first page, what did I say? I think we could hit.
60.
You was right, sir.
63%. We're going to step away real quick, folks, so we can call the radio station. We're going to go live one more time on the radio. We have the official results, 18 of 18 precincts in. We will get all that information to you, and then we'll kind of wind things down here on our live remote for election night coverage of Roane County, of the state of West Virginia, and some of those national races. Hang tight with us, folks. Well, thank you very much, George. And again, we are live down at the Roane County Courthouse. We have been following the local results throughout the evening, and we finally got all of the 18 precincts in. We just got handed those results, and we wanted to go as quickly as we could to the radio. This is the final time, by the way, that we will be on the radio. Once we get these results out to you guys on radio side of things, we are going to stay live for just a few more minutes on our streams of YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch. So if you don't get the results here and you are looking for a race that you want to talk about, or if you're looking for any levy results and you miss them right now, just make sure you send us a message on our live streaming coverage, and we'll try to get that to you before we close out the local stuff here tonight. So much to be determined in the national race at the top of the ticket, and, of course, statewide races have the vast majority been called at this point. A Republican sweep of many of these elections when it comes to West Virginia. But what we've been looking at, guys, is the local elections. Obviously, the one race that we had was for District 15 in the House of Delegates. Josh, you were able to probably call that one with 13 of the 18 precincts in. Erica Moore creating some history here as the first elected female delegate from District 15 serving Roane and Wirt counties.
That's right, Drew. You know, and her percentage actually increased throughout the night. So a very strong win, for Erica Moore. She took 4,316 votes to Juliana Penfold's 1,034. Erica Moore carried over 80% of the vote, and in a contested rate, that's a huge win. So, congratulations to Erica Moore on that really historic win, being the first female to be elected to that position. And while Drew's adjusting here, Joe, we just go through some of the obvious ones here. These are the final numbers in Roane County.
Yes.
Donald Trump got 4,172 votes. He carried over 75% in Roane County. Jim Justice, 4,082 votes. He also carried over 75%. These numbers are matching what's going on statewide.
Yeah, there's no surprise come statewide on this.
Carol Miller, 3,636 votes. She carries 69% in that race. Flipping over to the next page, Patrick Morrissey for governor, 3,512 votes to Steve Williams, 1,531. He carries over 65% of the vote. Secretary of State Chris Warner, who was running to replace his brother Mac. We've said it a few times tonight, probably some name recognition there helped. 4,040 votes to 1,171. Chris Warner carries over 77% of the vote in Roane County. Mark Hunt, 4,005 votes to Marianne Claters, 1,217. Mark Hunt carries over 76% of the vote. Larry Pack, treasurer, ran unopposed. Kent Leonhardt, 3,908 to Deborah Stiles, 1,269. Kent Leonhardt carries over 75% of the vote for the Commissioner of Agriculture race. Attorney General race, this is replacing Patrick Morrissey, who ran for governor. The Republican J.B. McCuskey, 4,008 votes to the Democrat opponent, who had 1,184. J.B. McCuskey carries over 77% of the vote in Roane County. So these are tremendous numbers for the Republicans. Glenn Jeffries ran unopposed. We already talked about Erica Moore. And then on the Republican side, Caleb Greathouse, unopposed for the county commission race. Daniel Minardi, unopposed for the prosecuting attorney's race. Philip Deaver, unopposed for the sheriff's race. Emily Westfall, unopposed for the assessor race. And then we had no surveyors. Amendment 1 is what we've been calling it. That's for Joe. Roane County's bucking the statewide 4. This was really close. 2,476 against 2,551. So 49.254 in Roane County. Statewide at the moment, though.
I was going to say, please tell me you refresh your results on that one.
Well, I did a few times. Look at that. Okay. 4, 243,689 against 241,826. Mathematically, by Joe McDonald's standards, that's both 50%.
Even. Yeah. No matter how you cut it, it's even.
So we're almost at 500,000 votes.
Yeah.
And it's separated by 1,800.
And it's only 65% of the precincts reporting
So
statewide.
that's going to be a really interesting one to look county by county to see how that did. And also, we've talked a lot, confusing to some people.
Yeah, and I wonder if less people were confused if the margin would be wider.
Maybe. You don't know.
Yeah, it's possible.
Now, here's these levies. Now, the first three have to pass by 60%. The emergency service levy, 3,281 against 2,023. The emergency service levy passes with 61.86% of the vote.
And that's close.
That's close.
But you think that's close.
Yeah. So the patch levy, for the levy, 3,243 against the levy, 2,074. It passes with 60.99%. So I did my quick, if you on camera, you saw me. It passed.
He was doing some numbers.
Right. So 5,317 people voted on that levy. It passed by 53 votes.
Wow.
So that's how close it is. Not quite as close as the Calhoun levy that
5 votes.
that failed by 5 votes, but still.
And again, that is not official.
That's
at
not
that
a
point, so.
Well, that's from the printout in Calhoun.
Yeah,
That picture
yeah.
of, but yeah. Senior nutrition. This is ran the best of all night. For the levy, 3,946 against 1,390. It passed with almost 73.95% of the vote.
Yeah, it dropped just a little bit because
right
it was right at 75%, then kicked down just a little bit at the end.
It was interesting, Joe. All these levies ran almost identical the whole time.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah, there was, which it makes it not as fun or interesting on our part because you to make things interesting, you'd like to see a fluctuation, but pretty much the levies was pretty much solid all night.
And then Board of Education levy. Now this needed 50% for 2,267 against 2,985. So the historic trend continues with these excess levies. Only 43.16% for it. So that levy does not pass. So that was a question we had earlier tonight was, would they run together? Would the 3 pull it up? Would it pull the others down? And it really looked like voters went through and chose different votes.
They did their
Unfortunately,
homework.
700 plus votes
And I'm gonna let
that they needed.
Drew interview her, but I said, do you think we can hit 60%, Joe? And by golly, we did it.
Well, we are very happy to be joined by Roane County Clerk Sina McDonald. Sina, obviously you and your staff have been going nuts here today and the weeks and months leading up to this, but a lot of hard work for you and your poll workers and everybody trying to help get out the vote, and it was an absolute success here this year. Voter turnout at 63%. That's got to feel good for you guys.
That's awesome. I mean, my goodness, in the primary we only had 34%, so we doubled that just about. So that's great.
Well, 18 precincts, and that requires a lot of effort from your poll workers, and, of course, getting those results to you guys as quickly as possible. They did a fantastic job as always.
Yes, I don't know if anybody knows, but we have 90 poll workers that work on Election Day. Plus, we had to have alternates in case anybody was sick or was not able to show up on Election Day. And it came in handy because there was a few that were not able to make it, and they filled in great, and everybody has had positive attitudes about the new machines, so that's a good thing.
That's number one. We've already heard about glitches in Arizona County somewhere else.
Yeah,
so
we don't need that.
we don't need any of those glitches. So, of course, the results that you bring us each of the times is 5 at a time, and we've got 18 of 18 now. So what is the next step now to certify this election locally? Obviously, there's still a lot of work for you guys to do here in the county clerk's office.
There is next Tuesday. We will have canvass, and we will go through one precinct that we draw out of a hat and double check to make sure everything equaled out just fine. And if we are less than that 1% margin of marginal error that we can have, then we'll be able to go ahead and count look at all the provisionals and make sure, see who counts and who doesn't. And it's just a long process.
Well, when you're looking at the results here in the county, obviously the only thing that was relatively close, as Josh Downey just mentioned, was that patch levy, which passed by a total of 53 votes or something like that. So that's one of those ones that was relatively close, but 53 votes may be relatively comfortable for you guys. I don't know if you heard, but over in Calhoun County, they had a Board of Education excess levy that failed by 5 votes.
Oh, my.
And again, that
provisionals could change that.
Yeah.
Because we had several provisionals. There were people who were coming out to vote that hadn't voted for years. So, I mean, it's very possible that it could change.
And there's still maybe a few outlying late absentees coming in.
As long as they have today's date postmarked on it, then we can still count them or, accept them for Canvas Day.
So officially, the totals and the final numbers will be known next Tuesday for Roane County, correct?
Yes.
And for our representation in all these other races, obviously.
Right.
And many of those, by the way, are probably not going to matter at the state level. My goodness, as we talked about it has been a crazy, just crazy Republican wave, again, over the last few years, as Josh has been talking about in the state of West Virginia, and a lot of those things called early by NBC News and by Metro News, and, of course, so that's what we have worked with. And, again, number one, thank you, Sina, you and your crew, for letting us come in here, but more than that, for giving us full access to what you guys have as it comes in, because that's the only way we can get that information out to the public.
Well, you're welcome, and this is the best way we figured we could do it, and then that only leaves us with less paper used.
I do appreciate
printing
that.
off 4 reports.
Yeah, we're not now that Josh can't use his precinct map. He doesn't care how many you bring us at one time.
Yeah.
I do miss that map though, Josh. I got to tell you.
We might bring it back someday. Just start
I
coloring
was going to say, you may need to get a hold of Charleston and say, hey, can you guys change it up to where we can?
That's it. We'll go to the legislator.
They're killing your flavor
That's
right now.
right.
Yeah. Well, Sina, obviously a great turnout, and that's huge. Obviously, congratulations to you guys here for a great night and a great voter turnout leading up to this. Early voting numbers were huge, thanks to your poll workers, again, because without them, this stuff doesn't go smoothly, and without you and your staff, this doesn't come off without a hitch as well.
Yes, I'm very thankful for everybody in my office and for all of the poll workers, early voting poll workers, the ones who worked on Election Day, the ones who trained and didn't even get to use their training. Those are the ones that I'm thankful for.
Well, and it shows at 63% that all these poll workers early in today, they worked hard.
And they did. I went around to every single precinct today, and every single one that I was in, they had people waiting, and that is wonderful.
That is a good sign to have. Well, that will do it for us here on the radio side of things. We're going to stay live for just a few more minutes, folks. If you have any last questions for us on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, or Twitch, send us a comment very, very quickly before we shut her down here. Those are the results for the Roane County election. 18 of 18 precincts have been tallied. Again, canvassing will take place next Tuesday, and the official results will be known at that point. Congratulations to Sina McDonald, our county clerk, and all of her crew here, all the poll workers. Thanks very much to Josh Downey. Thanks very much to Joe McDonald. For all of us here at WVRC on the radio side of things, have a wonderful election night. All righty, so we've got just a few more minutes here. And, again, if anybody has missed any of those final results, feel free to ask us a question before we shut down.
Now, Sina, one quick question. Is Canvass Day open to the public, where if somebody wants to just come and sit and watch the canvassing process, is it open to the public?
It is. They are welcome to come. Just fair warning, it's a long day.
Yeah. Especially with how many
bring your lunch.
5,575 ballots to
yes, exactly. To go
so hopefully you're going to pull the small precinct out of the hat.
That would be wonderful.
So, a couple of quick updates while we were talking about the final local results. According to NBC News, the presidential election, Ohio officially called for Donald Trump for 17 electoral votes, so he has bumped his number up to 185. Illinois called for Kamala Harris, so she is up to 81. Those are some of the numbers. And again, Ohio, used to be one of those massively important states, but it has kind of fallen off there. I also have a question here from Chris Underwood. He said, are the numbers going to be posted anywhere with precincts? Is that something that is done after the fact, and that will be out in the local paper, I imagine?
Yes, that will be after Canvas Day, and we will be putting it on definitely our Facebook page, and we can even do a radio show if we wanted to.
I would take it. I would take it. You guys know where we are.
And then Jim and David Hedges, they are always in contact with our office.
Yes.
So
Saw David a little earlier. Didn't
Yep.
get a chance to say hi to him, but he's probably in there still, I would imagine. One of them is probably in there still.
One-
Like I said, I
one
still
of
see
them.
Jim. So.
Yeah.
Now, I also have a quick question on TikTok. Adam Smith, what was the final numbers for the EMS levy? For the EMS levy, it was 3,281 for, 2,023 against, totaling 61.86% for the EMS levy. So the EMS levy does pass.
So Adam Smith, I just talked to yesterday on the radio. Congratulations to you guys. For that one, I also had a question from Mindy Milhone. Said, did the school levy pass? Unfortunately, Mindy, it did not pass. It was steady throughout the evening. It failed with a vote of 43% against and 57% for, about 700 plus votes. That one did not pass. So that was the only levy that did not pass. Of course, the patch levy, incredibly close.
I know.
In this one.
I wish, all votes matter, and most definitely this time around, because look how close the patch levy is at 60.99%.
And
they passed by 0.99%.
And patch is always that one levy that it passes, but it's always a nail biter to the end.
And it's great to have, money for our kids and money for the seniors and money for patch and money for all of the emergency services in the library. So, I like having the fire department here and the ambulance.
That's something I mentioned yesterday. I said, I don't ever want to see you all in uniform, but if I need you, it's good to have you.
Exactly. Exactly.
It is very important people get educated about the levies.
Yes.
They really, because I think a lot, it's those type of things, you hear things or you don't understand them, and maybe you're not educated enough. And I'm not saying that's what happened this time, but it is with all elections to be sure you know what that levy's for.
Yes.
Search out the information in this age of social media and websites. There should be no doubt that you can find the information you're looking for.
And that's like
when it comes to
Amendment
it.
1. I did not feel it was very well advertised.
None of us felt like it was well listed either.
No, it
was
not.
confusing.
It was very vague and.
Yeah, Josh has been having a very busy couple of weeks explaining to everybody what Amendment 1 means.
I was getting calls today after people voted saying,
What
I don't think I voted the right way.
Yes.
And I said, well, from what you're telling me, I don't think you did.
on what you meant to do.
But yeah,
yes,
it was
because it was confusing.
right. So, but yeah, thank it's confusing. You have those situations, and we said it. We're within 1,500 votes out of 500,000.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really something.
By the way, unofficially, the state of Kansas, with 6 electoral votes, called for Donald Trump, according, again, to NBC News' website, and Rhode Island, the little tiny state that could, with 4 electoral votes, goes to Kamala Harris.
So they have the same amount of electoral votes as a whole West Virginia.
And Drew, I don't know. It probably means nothing, but if you look at other websites, I don't know what they're seeing nationally, but the New York Times is now predicting there's a 69% chance Donald Trump will win the White House.
Very interesting.
So that's interesting numbers that you're starting to see, and you're going to start seeing in the written. Now, I just see the headline.
Yes.
But if you're into this politics, especially the national politics, it's going to get really, and we're not going to be on air. We're going to be at home watching.
Yeah.
But as you get to the 10 and 11 o'clock hours, and you start looking at the Pennsylvanias, the Georgias, and we'll just run through them real quick.
Michigan, Wisconsin's.
Right, but Pennsylvania now, it's Kamala Harris 50.5%, Donald Trump 48.6%. So there's a spread of about 50,000 votes, but there's only 37% in. Let's skip over to Georgia real quick. Right now, Donald Trump is carrying Georgia by 52%, so he's up about 4 percentage points. We're at 80% of the vote in. So the numbers of available votes are going down, and that's a percentage that's been holding for a while. So at some point are the real professionals going to start calling some races.
The real professionals.
Yeah, and then North Carolina, we'll look at that real quick. That was one of the earlier ones to close. Right now, Donald Trump's carrying North Carolina he's up by about 4 or 5 percentage points, 64% of the vote in. So right now in those states, and is this going to be a nationwide trend?
And because last time we checked, North Carolina, Harris was ahead, so it's flipped since we looked last.
We've seen that they were all 1 or 2 point polls. Well, now we're seeing Trump up 3 or 4 percentage points. That's it. Historically, he has outperformed polls. But also historically, no party's ever done that 3 times in a row.
Right.
So that's going to be the trends to watch nationally if you're really into this.
Yeah, I was checking the gambling site. The site I've been playing with all evening, and it's showing Trump with a landslide at this point.
Yeah,
and it just keeps going up.
So I don't know if that's because the people looking at their numbers, looking at what's available in Pennsylvania, and that's what's going to start happening. We're going to start looking what votes are left.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a really interesting night.
And Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are all 3 going to keep the trend that they have been, where if one goes one way, the other 2 follow? Or is this the year that they may split?
Right. And really, if it goes, if Donald Trump runs Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, it's over.
Yeah.
So we'll
very
see.
interesting numbers.
Absolutely.
We invite you all to go to NBC News, look it up. If you want to go to any of the other sites, or if you're at home looking, just go ahead and look and enjoy the rest of the evening. Root for your person and whoever it may be. And here's something to remember: if your person doesn't win, it's not the end of the world. Relax, take a big deep breath. The sun will rise tomorrow. It'll all be okay.
Tomorrow morning, when we wake up, regardless of what happens, we're still all Americans.
Yep,
and
100%.
That's what we got to remember.
Well, anything else for you guys? It's been a great evening once again.
I've enjoyed it again, Drew.
I'm glad to have Josh Downey back with us, Joe.
Yes,
this is the first time the 3 of us have been able to work together.
Yes. Josh has made us sound educated, Drew.
He really does.
I'll have to watch it later while I patiently waited.
We're sorry the percentages were rounded up. We're going to address that.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got 2 years to fix my PowerPoint
We got a
software.
post-coverage meeting that we're going to take at Backward Ramblings, of course. Well, folks, it's been a great night for us here in Roane County. Again, follow the county clerk's website. Their Facebook account. Canvassing is next Tuesday, and then the official results will be finalized. You can follow them there. Of course, we may have ourselves a little powwow at the station, and, of course, the Roane County Reporter, the Times Record, will have the official results, I assume, next Thursday in their paper. They'll wait for the canvass to finish up. For all of us here at WVOC, I want to thank, obviously, Cena McDonald, her crew. Joe McDonald, thank you so much for giving us all these graphics. You've been working that thing like crazy here today. And Josh Dowdy, it's been a great time having you back. We look forward to doing this again every single time we have an election.
Absolutely.
Well, for all of us here at WVRC, I'm Andrew Miller. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your election.